uh, and they filed one case there in 2006 and 2013, another case. Uh, Kidnapping for ransom, they had three. These are just cases filed in court, madam. In 2010, 3 years later, they filed four cases for kidnapping for ransom. Now, in 2011, they filed six cases for qualified theft. And for corruption, Sandigan Bayan, uh, seven cases were filed and decided in 2010. And in 2018, for cybercrime, they filed eight cases. Tama ba ito? Eight cases. And they filed 10 cases in 2008, which were decided. I think I may be making a mistake here. Let's just look at the year filed in court because there's a numerical order on cases. I don't know if these are the number of cases that they filed. It's a numerical order. I'm sorry, sir, gentlemen. For fraud, from 2008 to 2020, they filed fraud case, Mr. President. Now, will the gentle lady kindly inform us if there has been these cases were actually filed and prosecuted to the hilt, Mr. President?
Mr. President, as of the moment, there are three pending cases, drug-related money laundering cases in the RTC. But out of those three cases, there's been no conviction, however.
So only three cases, madam, have been filed in the regional trial court. Did I hear you correct, ma'am?
Yes, thus far, yes.
So after since 2002, and we're now in 2020, about to enter the 2021, hopefully, with hope. And so far, the predicate crimes of terrorism, maybe we'll get lucky because now we have an anti-terror law. The predicate crime of kidnapping, they were successful there. Uh, I don't see much by way of drugs, Mr. President. Have there been any predicate, any crimes prosecuted for drugs? And you know, drugs is flooding our streets, flooding our country, and all the people in jail. We've talked about them. They're one of our colleagues have been placed in jail allegedly for bribing her. And yet, Mr. President, I don't see any prosecution. Wala ko nakikitang napo-prosecute sa drugs for money laundering.
Mr. President, the distinguished gentleman from Zambales is correct. We've been informed by AMLAC that they only have three pending cases on drugs and no conviction so far.
Thank you, ma'am. So sa makatwid, talagang hindi nakaka-prosecute at kahit na sabihin lang ko konti lang sila. Nung araw sa Amerika, kung manunod tayo ng sine, akala mo yung Untouchable starring Elliot Ness. Ang dami na, including Al Capone. No? At least nakahuli sila for tax evasion. Tumatawa si my good friend, General Rodney, General Bato. But to my mind, madam, we gave them a budget of 63 million in 2019. Sa akin, maliit yun kung talagang tutusin. Pero kung tayo ay makikita natin sila na may nangyayari, ayan, tinaas natin in 2020, 131 million. And in 2021, we provided 185 million. Now, I know that the President is very sincere in fighting drugs. Pero kung ganyan lang ang lalabas, ma'am, mukhang may problema tayo dun sa AMLA talaga. Dahil kahit na konti lang yung pera, kung talagang pagsisikapan, makakaya naman nilang talongin ng NBI, ang mga pulis, matutulungan sila. Siguro naman may mahuhuli, ma'am, ano? What do you think, ma'am?
Mr. President, tama po kayo dyan. In fact, Senator Recto brought this up.
I
There are
know.
many conditions. There are many conditions being given by the FATF, but a lot of those conditions have nothing to do with the legislative branch. There's also a condition about what the AMLC have to do to improve their department, like increase the number of employees and then have a reporting mechanism, etc. But I've been told just now that there are 3 completed civil forfeiture cases related to drugs. So it's an on, and then there are 18 pending civil forfeiture cases related to drugs. So out of the 18, 3 of those are worth 3.5 billion, Mr. President.
Of the case. That's the amount of the case, ma'am, no?
Correct.
Yung AMLA, hindi pa nila pinaprosecute para sa money laundering. Wala tayong conviction doon. Tama po ba yun, ma'am?
Wala pa pong conviction. Tama po the distinguished gentleman, Mr.
Wala
President.
tayong conviction. And yet, my good friend is the Secretary of Justice. I know he's a very honest man, and there have been others before him. We have the Ombudsman. We have all the prosecuting officials of the government na matutulungan ang AMLA, pero mukhang wala. Now, ma'am, 152,000 drug cases were filed by the National Prosecutorial Service. I'll just check, ma'am, kung anong year ito. But, I mean, just looking at it, even if we say 10 years, 152,000 drug cases is a lot of cases. Now, I bet you if we look at this, ang nahuhuli yung mga mahihirap, yung walang makain, magtutulak na lang. Pero yung malalaki, hindi nahuhuli. Yun ang gusto ko malaman. Bakit hindi nahuhuli? Because kung ako, ang budget ko, ma'am, and you know, I've been a mayor. I thought I was a pretty good mayor. Wala naman pumupuri sa akin. Pupurihin ko na yung sarili ko, ma'am. Nagpapakulo ako nung araw ng drug, ng mga tao naguko ng drugs. Sorry, mama. But kung ako yun,
Sir, I mean, if makatotohanan naman eh, hindi naman kayo
hindi, ma'am. Hindi, ma'am. Nagbibiro lang ako. Baka we might blow up this year because sa tingin ko, ma'am, kung ako yan, kahit na mag-focus lang tayo ng isa o dalawa, mas maluwag sa kalooban ko na may mahuhuli tayo. Unfortunately, ni walang nahuhuli, ma'am. That speaks a lot of volumes. And, you know, again, I go back to the principle na sinasabi ko, which my good friend Senator Dillon, Senator Recto, Senator Pangilinan, and others here, I know all of you feel that. Bakit tayo sunod-sunuran dito sa FATF? And I've been asking my staff for the last several days, ano ba ang pinasunod ng FATF? Kung sa Canada nga, ma'am, nagsambulat ang money laundering doon eh. Wala pa kami nakikita halos na medyo serious prosecution na nangyari. Of all the countries, as you can see, the U.S. predominantly posed the highest threat to the Philippines relative to the unlawful activities associated to drug trafficking. I wonder what that means. Tinatakot tayo ng Amerikano. At sila rin ang nagbibigay sa atin ng information. I know that, ma'am. Pag may nahuhuli, binibigyan tayo halos ng information ng DEA. And may nahuhuli. Pero wala pa rin nahuhuli sa drug, sa money laundering o nakukonvict. Ang dami nakakulong doon. Iba nangamatay na nga eh. Kuno. Namatay na yung mga Chinese drug dealers doon sa loob ng pitan. Namatay na. Wala tayo nakuha sa money laundering. Am I beating a dead horse here, ma'am? I don't want to go and pass a bill. Tapos hindi naman tayo, wala naman mangyayari pagkatapos. You know me, palagi na lang ako tumataas dyan pagka tumatayo, pagka may pinapatay. In fact, nahihiya na ako sa Senado kung tatayo ako, baka sabihin, ayan na naman si Dick, bumabanat naman doon sa mga napatay. Eto na naman tayo ngayon sa drugs. Wala naman tayo nahuli, na lang na prosecute dito. Ano po ba ang ating magagawa para yan? If we change the law, natakot tayo sa FATF, magbabago ba yung sitwasyon sa ating bansa? Even in America, drugs have proliferated dramatically. Some of our generals have been caught bringing money and I don't see any prosecution. Meron ba tayong narinig sa money laundering doon sa mga generals na nahuli, ma'am?
Para wala naman po akong narinig. Sa tingin ko, kung meron po kayong alam sa atin. Iniintay din po natin yung sagot ng AMLC. Pero sa tingin ko, meron rin yan kinalaman sa, at alam ko, the distinguished gentleman from Zambales would agree. sometimes our courts are also overburdened. There's there's not that much financial support for their infrastructure as well. So difficult to get a conviction given the backlog also and also the hard, heavily burdened court system.
Uh, I just have some information here. It says 3 cases filed versus drugs. I think we talked about that. When there are 12,508 suspicious transactions reported, ma'am, 12,508. Uh, I will preclude my point, Miss Ma'am, no? Kasi ang tingin ko, parang ang pinapahirapan yung law-abiding citizen. Pag nagdeposito ng malaki, suspicious o covert transaction na tayo rin. Kagad. Tatabaan kagad tayo. Pero ang dami-daming drugs, ma'am. Hindi na nakukuha. Hindi ba dapat hudyat yan sa atin na tarry a little, yung nga sinasabi ni Shakespeare, there is something else. Yun nga yan. Ano yung something else na yan? Hindi ata nagagawa yung dapat gawin. Now, pinagtatakaan ko, bakit ang ating gobyerno ay sunod-sunuran? I've asked this, hindi naman ako inconsistent eh. Nung si Cheese ang nakatayo sa lugar niyo, ma'am, tinanong ko na sila niyan, bakit tayo sumusunod? Because alam ko, ayaw natin yung graft and corruption. There was a brilliant interpellation made by my good friend from Batangas yesterday. Kaya ba ninyong i-prosecute yan? Patong-patong ang ipa-file niyo sa isang kaso. Ngayon lang, konti pa lang hindi pa napaprosecute. I don't think I would want to participate or I don't know if any of our friends will think na just because we said it, it's going to happen. And that seems to be the process in our country. We say there's a law, pero hindi naman ini-enforce. Wala naman tayo nahuhuli. Kung ini-enforce man pagdating sa mga husgado, and I'm just speculating, forgive me, I'm a chairman of the Committee on the Justice, baka naman nagkakaroon ng cash sunduan. O takutan. That's why we're coming out with the judicial marshals to protect our judges. Para nga hindi tayo mapapasubo. Dahil kulang na kulang tayo, or for that matter sa Muntinlupa, babarilin nila yung nagsasalita, wala rin nahuhuli at wala rin file ng AMLA cases doon sa loob ng Muntinlupa. Kaya lalong natatakot yung mga tao doon dahil masyadong napakalakas ng mga taong yan. Would you agree with that, ma'am?
Yes, Mr. President. I think that the distinguished gentleman has really pointed out a lot of those important issues with hounding us. And going back to what you were saying earlier, I also received word from the AMLC. The reason why they haven't prosecuted majority of the cases that they received are all possession. AMLC prioritizes drug trafficking that has high proceeds. Most of the pending drug cases with the NPS, National Prosecutor Service, are in relation to possession, which does not have proceeds. So yun po yung kanilang sinabi. Sir, your mic is off, sir.
Tomorrow we woke up and there's the reality na meron tayong na-prosecute na drug lord. Kinuha yung kanyang mga bahay, kinuha yung kanyang mga kotse, kinuha yung kanyang eroplano or barko. I think magkakaroon ng ngipin itong drug, itong tinatawag nating money laundering law. Hindi po ba? Kaya nakita nyo nung araw, yung si Lim Seng, martial law, ang unang-unang binaril ng martial law ay si Lim Seng. At malaking publicity, nangatakot lahat ng tao, sumunod lahat sa curfew. Pero ngayon, ang dami-dami. Mahirap pa paniwalaan yung tao na itong money laundering natin, although we want to do it, kung wala namang track record, talagang hindi pa rin maniniwala ang tao. At Ang sinasabi ko, ma'am, ang pinahihirapan, halimbawa, nagninegosyo ka, ang pinapahirapan natin ay yung mga small fry. Ang pinapahirapan dito sa mga predicate crimes na sinabi natin ay yung gustong magnegosyo. Ako, ma'am, I'm a free enterprise person eh. If you look at our kababayans from from sila Henry C, sila Lucio Co, sila Lucio Tan, all the big guys, lahat yan, you know, may work ethic yung mga yan. Pero ngayon, kung siguro gagawin natin yan, pag nagdeposito yung mga yan, baka pagbibinta ka na kagad ng money laundering case yan. Ba't ang laki ng deposito mo? Doon ako nag-aalala sa mga Pilipino. Gusto rin lumaki, katulad nitong mga kaibigan natin, sila Senator Villar. Ayan marami kami nabentang lupa. Ayan, lumalabas, no? Pero hindi mag-aalangan yung maliliit na tao na, okay, magdideposit ako ng pera, nag-aalangan ako, meron palang money laundering law. Pwede pala akong ilagay sa covered or suspicious transactions. Paano tayo yayaman? Paano yayaman yung maliliit, ma'am? At pati nga tayo, nadamay, politically exposed persons. And you know, forgive me for citing this, I remember one of my idols when I was a kid, I was a training committee chairman of the Party for Philippine Progress. It spreads throughout the entire country's record. Si Raul Banglapos was, wala nga pera yung tao, siya parang na-convict for overspending. Yun ang nangyayari na naman dito, ma'am. Bakit naman ako boboto kung wala naman akong nakikita na yung malalaking tao, tumatawa all the way to the back, humaharap sa mga hearings nila sa lower house, nagtututuro kung sino-sino ang nabigyan. Pero wala namang sinoprosecute na money laundering, ma'am. Hindi ko maintindihan yun. Can you help me out, ma'am, on that score? Or
Well,
I cannot see and understand why the inability to enforce the law that we have so assiduously written in the past and continue to amend, mukhang wala namang mangyayari. Tapos ngayon, it leads me to the suspicion na parang pinagtutulak-tulakan lang tayo ng FATF. Pero as I showed you yesterday, even America na pinakamarami sigurong money laundering cases, hindi pa rin ganun kalaki, 1,000 plus lang, hindi rin na makayanan. Sa tingin ko, pag tinignan nyo lahat yung bansa, I remember yung Herdis Group, ang balita ko, maybe Senator Dilong can help me because he was Secretary of Justice once upon a time. Yung Herdis Group, yung gumagawa ng mga filter sa sigarilyo natin ng araw, yung gumawa ng tinatawag na Westinghouse nuclear plant, maybe Senator Dilong can tell me, di ba, yung pera niya nasa Liechtenstein, meron siyang castle doon sa Liechtenstein. Hindi na natin nahuli. Sometimes, ano ba talaga ang problema, ma'am? Para tayong tao-tauhan dito, gagawa tayo ng law, hindi naman ipo-prosecute. Paano naman po yan?
Mr. President, I share the concern of our distinguished interpolator. I think law enforcement in general, as well as the judicial system, needs an overhaul. And I'm not just saying this as a general motherhood statement. We know that all of these agencies are interrelated in terms of whether or not they will be effective in their work. Even in the AMLAC, somebody and files a case, if the cases will go on forever in court, then there's no justice that will immediately be granted. So I don't think the conditions of the FATF is something that can immediately show us the results that we desire. But I think for the most part, it will help somehow, as long as we make those provisions reasonable.
You know, ma'am, there are two worlds in our country and in the world. The world of the haves and the world of the have-nots. In the middle are developing countries like us na pwede tayong pagtulak-tulakan. Tingnan nyo, yung mga general ng Amerikano, hindi papayag ang Amerikano na mapunta sila sa prosecution ng International Committee of Justice or Human Rights. I remember even Colin Powell was charged. But let me just, from our research, and this is taken from the article Money Laundering Laws, Ineffective and Expensive. I repeat, Ineffective and Expensive by Daniel J. Mitchell. Another report from the Wall Street Journal explains that the rules money laundering actually make it harder, pinapahirapan ang law enforcement to monitor the people who might actually be doing bad things. Ma'am, yan ho. So, yung mga laws, lalong nahihirapan ang mga money laundering, taking the side naman of the AMLC here, no? US banks, for example, have closed thousands of accounts held by people and organizations considered suspicious. Ma'am, thousands, high risk or difficult to monitor, including money transfer firms, foreign banks, and nonprofits working abroad. Closing accounts for fear their customers may be up to no good, evicts from the financial system, tinatanggal from the financial system, yung mga pag-close ng account nila, napapahirapan yung mga inosente as well as those the U.S. government would most like to watch. A consequence not anticipated by Washington. Comptroller of the currency, Thomas Curry, this month acknowledged the potential danger. Ang mga transactions, sabi niya, na dapat ginawa legally and transparently, harap-harapan, makikita, hayagan, may be driven underground. Mapupwersa na magtago underground. Yan ang sinabi niya. He told an international conference of bankers and regulators in Washington. I will stop there for a while and say, palagay nyo, yan ang nangyayari sa atin na babalik ulit doon sa ilalim ng kama ilalagay o doon sa alkansya ng araw, tinatago yung pera sa buko, yung bao, o kaya ibinabaon yung pera sa ammunition box, sinalagay doon sa mga at o nasa kaha yung mga pera. Nung araw, malakas ang negosyo ng kaha. Ngayon, imbis na mapunta at mapaikot yung pera, mapautang yung mga mahihirap, ay natatakot silang, nag-aalangan sila na baka pahirapan. And now, in the hands of a tyrant, pwede rin gamitin yan sa mga katulad natin na mga politicians na pwede tayong pahirapan, di ba? Magpalit ka ng boto mo. I'm just putting out so many profiles na pwedeng mangyari. Dahil kung hindi tayo mag-iingat dito, it is weaponized against the innocent civilian who's just trying to eke out an existence as hard as he can. At alam nyo, ang tatalo sa kanya, hindi yung may ginawa siyang kasalanan. He puts fear in between his ambition to become better so that his family will become better because baka mamaya maglayo ko ng pera sa bangko, malagay pa ako dyan, di na lang ako, mananahimik na lang ako, bakit ako maglalagay, papahamak pa ako dyan. Alam niyo naman tayo, ang daling takutin. Ng buong mundo, madaling takutin. Lalo na sa ating bansa, yung walang kaya, pag nabalitaan yan, baka mamaya sabihin, ayoko na maglagay ng pera sa bangko. And that's why I told you the other day that there are only about so many bank accounts in our country, ma'am. Yung mga may hirap, hindi lang, wala silang ilalagay. And according to the Financial Inclusion Survey, 51.2 million, 51 million na kababayan natin are still unbanked. Kaya nagpo-proliferate rin yung mga hari ng padala, reyna ng padala. At doon na pupunta. Nakalagay dyan 15.8 million Filipinos with bank accounts. The rest have no bank accounts. At pagkatapos, mayroon pa ngayon na mayroon pang intindihin yung tinatawag nilang Bitcoin. Ginagawa sa Russia yan para magtago ng pera. So ma'am, with all this, humihina ang loob ko na suportahan ito binoto ko na ito dati pero wala naman nangyari. Ang problema pa rin ay enforcing. Even the existing law has not been enforced. Ngayon, humihingi na naman sila dito. Lalakas ba yan pag sinabi ko, ako cheerleader ng Ateneo ng araw, mag-cheerin ako sa UP. Pag sabihin ko, mag-cheer ako sa inyo, kailangan lumakas kayo, Eh, hindi pa rin lalakas kung hindi magte-training at hindi talaga bibigyan ng suporta ng mga alumni. So ganito rin dito, kung hindi natin mabibigyan ng suporta itong mga AMLA, eh naku, ano mangyayari sa atin? Eh, letter law na naman yan. I don't want to make your job difficult. I admire you, ma'am, because you're taking a position. Pero sa tingin ko, nakakawawa tayo nitong malalaking bansa at hindi na talaga tayo umuunlad at ngayon bilhin nyo 5 million realty. Magkano ba ang realty ngayon? Yung middle class ngayon nakakabili na ng 20 million na bahay yan sa BDO, di ba? Yung mga ganyan, yung mga Makati, may second hand house. Eh pag nagbayad sila, bagay kung cash lang yun, talagang titikin sila, kumisa nga, nasa tampipi yung pera Nandun sa ilalim ng kama. Ilalabas sila yung pera, may amoy na. Pagkatapos natatakot sila. Ba't ako magbabayad dyan? Mahuhuli pa ako. In other words, ma'am, ang tingin ko, itong batas na ito, we're slitting the throats of the very poor who want to grow bigger. And all the people are laughing all the way to the bank, yung mga Germans na kinumpiska yung pera ng Hudyo, yung mga mafia, yung mga nangurakot rin sa Amerika, yung mga sa Japan, ang daming mga kurakot rin sa Japan. Gano'n rin, dead letter law sa Canada. So, yan ang aking mga kanina, ang lalim ng speech ni Senator Soto. Bilib na bilib ako. At ang malalalim ng mga Tagalog na binato sa atin. Wala akong makitang mas malalim pa. Dito sasabihin ko na kahindik-hindik naman yan na hindi natin papayawanin at kahindik-hindik naman na pipilitin tayo nito madalaki na sumunod sa kanila dahil malaki sila. Ayoko naman yon. Hindi Fernando po yon. Ang Fernando po lalaban sa bandang huli yan at ipaglalaban tayo. Thank you, ma'am. Yeah, it's one of my questions. Ma'am, hindi kayo nakakuan. Meet yan.
Yes. Mr. President, alam mo, from our esteemed colleague, I share his observation. There are a lot that are probably discouraged from joining the formal economy because of certain unreasonable regulations or restrictions. In fact, it has also come to our attention that if you are an offshore gaming operator or service provider or anything to do with gambling, I suppose, most banks, or if not all, would rather not open your account. And we can't blame them because if you're a covered person or somebody involved in gaming, it might be tedious work for the bank to give special attention to your account. But it demonstrates the fact that there are many, even if let's say we recognize already service providers, for example, as a covered person. Therefore, they're covered. It's not saying that they're banned from banking, but still the banks might not be encouraging their business. So tama po Senator Gordon, Mr. President, pwedeng sa ilalim na lang ng kama muna ilagay yung iba. Dahil nga hindi naman talaga na nagiging medyo mahirap ang regulasyon, pero yung iba naman na nakakalusot pa rin. So it's really trying to find the middle ground, and what we're doing our best to comply with the best practices of the financial sector all over the world, not just here in the Philippines. So that's why we're defending this initiative. But admittedly, it is not a cure-all for what we are trying to achieve.
Ma'am, I hope you don't mind. Far from it. It's not the cure-all. In fact, nakakasakit yan yung maliliit, kahapon napasa natin yung bill na makakapag-ari na yung mga tao na tituladong lupa na 12 hectares. Kung uutang sa bangko yan, maganda. Ay kung uutang sa labas yan, dahil mas may tutulong sa kanya, baka hindi rin niya mailagay yung pera niya dahil natatakot siya. But upon the other hand, nakita rin natin to, ang sinasabi doon sa sinaside kong article kanina, the whole flow of money goes underground. And that becomes counterproductive to the original purpose of being able to track it. In other words, tinatago na lang. But on the other hand, alam ko, iba, nagugulat sa akin dyan. Kung sasabihin ko, pwede na kayong pumasok dito. Katulad ng Amerika. Kahit anong ilagay mong pera dyan, basta ideklara mo lang. Ox na yan. At pag nagawa yon, hindi po ba yung mga intelligence agents natin or agencies, and forgive me for saying it's an oxymoron, na pagka ito ay papasok yung pera, ma'am, at least malalaman mo kung sino nagpapasok kaysa hindi mo alam. Don't you think it might be a better idea to do that? And kung masyadong malaki ang pera pinapasok nito, palay ko, meron ito. Dapat tahimik na lang tayong lahat dyan. Di mo kailangan ng batas. Babantayan na lang yan. Kung sakasakali, tingnan mo, maraming pera itong lokong ito. Wala naman siya may papakitang hanap buhay. Dinala pa yung pera. At least may lead ka kaagad. Meron kang makikita kaysa tinatago underground. Tama po ba yun, ma'am?
Alam mo, Mr. President, maybe you see the pro and the con. Well, the pro is, pag merong regulasyon, pag hindi sumunod ang nag-report, kunyari yung bangko, hindi binatyagan yung isang account, pag may batas, institution, yung commercial bank. Pero, kung wala namang, pero dahil doon, maraming mga ayaw mag-deposito kasi pwede nga silang mahuli. Naman, pag nagkaroon naman ng pag wala namang batas, mas maraming magdideposito. Dahil nga hindi sila matatakot, wala namang mga restrictions, baka may mas mahuli tayo kung talagang babantayan. Pero again, walang legal basis to hold the financial sector accountable if they don't do it. Kasi nga there's no law. So I guess that those are the two considerations. Which one are we leaning towards? I think what we're trying to put forward here is the global standard of financial practices. Whether or not it's the most effective, we've seen, and the good gentleman has pointed out that it has a lot of deficiencies. But for now, this is what they're asking of us to pass.
But ma'am, everybody I'm sure will agree that money taken out of circulation is unproductive money. And you'll agree with me na kung yung money yan ay nilagay sa bangko, may makakautang at may mapapalo tayong money trail kahit na paano, kahit na ilagay mo, walang parusa muna yan, mapapalo mo lahat yung mga malilikot sa aparato, yung mga kumikickback, malalaman mo lahat yan dahil magkakaroon ka ng basihan. Because yun namang kumikickback, hindi naman nila i-declare yan eh. Di ba? Yung mga napapasok ng pera, katulad ng yung daan-daan milyon na pinasok, hindi naman lahat dineclare yun eh. So ibig sabihin, we are rewarding yung mga loko at yung matitino, hindi nating ma-reward. So ano po ang mangyayari sa atin? Ang tingin ko, dapat talaga maging productive yung ating bayan. At least pag may, ang gusto ko nga ang Panama, ang Hong Kong, Singapore, nasa listahan pa sila hanggang ngayon. Pumapasok pa yung pera nila. Geneva, kunyari, nagka-control ng konti, pero maraming namatay naman Hudyo. Hindi na makuha yung pera, kawawa naman. To my mind, siyempre, ibang bangko, gusto sila magdeposito dahil pagka nahuli, papatunayan pa nila kung talaga sa kanila yung pera. Sa kanila na naman yan. So, ibig sabihin, let's not weaponize it and let us encourage our people. Wherever I go sa probinsya, ma'am, kilala ako na sasabihin ko, ito hindi ko kayo inaabutan. Hindi po ako nag-aabot ng pera. Meron po lamesa doon, pipirmahan nila, representative ng Red Cross, saka representative ng bangko na kaya yung money transfer agent natin, na pinipirmahan yan. At hindi namin inaabot. Dahil ang prinsipyo nga, yung tumatanggap mas mababa ang kamay. Kaya sinasabi nga, work, save, invest, prosper. Pag nagtrabaho ka, ang turo sa atin ng mga magulang natin noon, i-save mo yung pera mo, invest mo yung pera mo. Pero kung merong Damocles sword na ganitong batas, na wala naman na po-prosecute, dapat ka, sabihin ko, huwag tayong matakot, wala naman na po-prosecute eh. Pero still, that's still a damper on our people to be able to make their money grow as other friends of ours who are now multi-billionaires Nung araw yan, natatakot sa BIR. Sasabihin, Chinese yan, pwede nating pahirapan yan. Alam nyo, I'm sure marami naglagay dyan sa mga kaibigan natin na yan ngayon. Ngayon, malaki na sila, abay, sila na sinusuyo ngayon. Hindi ko naman nila lahat, ano po, lest I be accused of something else. The point is, on the way to multi-billionaire status ng ilang mga kababayan natin, wala namang money laundering nung araw eh. Marami mga contractor na yumaman, ngayon natututong tumulong sa atin, and I'd rather na tumulong kaysa itago. And in reality, when you have all our people who have left the country and put their money abroad, when are we going to have something done about that? It's never going to happen. Nag-amnesty tayo, hindi na na-enforce properly. Pag may ginawa tayo, dapat lahat ng I's dotted, lahat ng T's crossed, para hindi makakalusot yan. Mas gusto ko nang ilabas nila yung pera, papatawarin ko na sila, basta lumabas ang pera, meron kang makukuha dyan, kaysa naman hindi natin pinapakinabangan yung perang yan. And then, basta may sasabihin na, I don't know how to craft that law. I'm been trying to find that way out there. Pero I would like to see na makuha yung mga perang lumabas sa ating bansa at lumabas dito sa ating bayan para magamit yan. I'll give you an example of that, of what I'm saying also, ma'am. Meron ako mga kaibigan, mga brads ko nga, natutuwa ako dahil yung kanyang tatay, brad ko rin, nagtayo siya, nag-vision siya nung araw na magkaroon ng Covlandia. I hate to do this, but I just have to say that kung pumasok yung Pogo, alam natin yung Pogo, maraming nagma-money laundering dyan. Pumasok yung Pogo dito, malamang kasama yung mga pumasok na pera dyan doon sa nahuli natin sa airport. Pero at least, kumita ngayon yung mga anak nung brad kong yun, na tiga UP rin, lahat sila, very stalwart supporters of UP, sila magkakapatid, kumita ngayon dahil ang laki na ibenta yung pera. Ngayon, kung tatanungin ko, saan galing yung perang dinala dyan? Di ba? Malaki masyado yung pera eh. Pero, kumita na yung mga babayan natin. Okay. At least alam mo na pag nagpasok uli yun, babantayan mo na ngayon. I don't know if I'm even too practical. But my point is, hindi ba, pumasok yung pera, naiwan na rito. Marami nang natutulungan yung pamilya nila uli na hindi pa sila kailangang mangurakot. Pinaghirapan ng ama nila, nakuha nila yung pera, pero yung nagpasok niyan, kung tatanungin natin, siyempre, baka matakot na pumasok yung pera, hindi na bibili ng lupa dito, yung mga yan. So, those are some of the things that I find really, call me somebody who doesn't know what he's talking about. I will say maybe, but I just have as a senator to put my 2 cents in para in the debate, nasa spread into the record na pinag-usapan natin ito. Or maybe there may be a better mousetrap na either an amnesty or something else, no? But when you look at the record nga, sabi, siguro tataas pa natin yung 5 million. I wouldn't doubt that. But even with that, hindi ako nagko-concur dyan. I'd rather, yan sila, papasok na yung pera nila, ilagay nila sa bangko, and then malalaman na natin by good intelligence na yung binibigay na pera natin na mas malaki pa yung binibigay natin pera sa mga intelligence services natin, talong-talo talaga yung paghuhuli natin itong money laundering. And sir, Abam, as you know, money must be circulated for the benefit of the economy. Hindi dapat tinatago yung pera, dapat pinapaikot yung pera. That is what I saw from my parents. They were hardworking people. Pag kumita yung sine, lalagay lang sa ilalim ng kama. Yung restaurant sa amin, pagkagabi, pagkabakasyon, nagtatrabaho ako sa tatay ko at nanay ko. Ako nagkakaha, ako nagsasara ng kaha, kami magkakapatid. Pagdating ng gabi, lalagay lang sa ilalim ng pera, yung pera sa kama. The next day, pupuntahan pa ng bangko, kukunin yung pera. Bilhin nyo, pinupuntahan ng bangko yung bahay namin para makuha. Dahil nung araw, Vietnam War, talagang nagsambulat ang dollar, dyan, nagsambulat ang pera. So, nakukuha ng bangko yung pera dyan. Ma'am, So let me ask our colleague, well, the gentle lady. I think there are many, una from the standpoint of enforcement, from the standpoint of money circulation, from the standpoint of putting savings, even if it comes from a dirty source. I can remember, marami pang accusations yan. Patawarin niyo ako ha. Kanina may binabasa ko sa Inquirer, yung tungkol sa Katoliko. At least yung Katoliko, tinuruan tayong magmahalan in last paragraph. Narinig ko rin ng araw, binibigyan rin ng pera ng mga malalaking politiko, yung mga pare. Huwag naman kayo magagalit sa akin, alam ko yon. Ilang probinsya, sinusustentuhan ng mga politiko, yung mga pare. Because yung mga pare naman talaga, wala naman lang sa source of income, kundi yung contribution rin. So again, even that may be affected. But to me, the objective of this law was really to prevent terrorism, to prevent drugs, to prevent corruption and crime. Siguro simplihan na lang natin yon. Tapos say na, okay, pumasok tayo dyan, pasok nyo yung pera sa bangko, siguro pwede pa tayo magpa-amnesty, pero I'm not thinking about that right now. I don't want to scare anybody about that. As far as I'm concerned, that is another situation na dapat natin maintindihan dito sa batas na ito. I had one more thing that I had in mind. I hope I did not lose it, and that is the point, I think, of money coming into the country na dapat ma-circulate nga. And from all the things that I've tried to put up, and we're still looking for more research before I vote on this matter, nakikita ko talagang mukhang hindi effective. Ang nakikinabang lang dito, yung talagang may threat sa terrorism. Kung yung Amerika nga, laki-laki na ng threat ng drugs, ito rin tayo, malaki rin ng threat sa drugs, mukhang wala pa tayo nakukuha dyan sa mga yan. Di ba napakaganda, if one day makita nyo yung perang nakuha, diniposit sa bangko. I have asked that many times during some of our investigations, walang maipakita sa atin. So, ma'am, again, I don't want our economy to slow down or even risk that slowdown. Just para magpakitang tao sa FATF. How do we compare with other countries sa FATF, ma'am? Are we in the bottom? Are we in the middle? I showed you a list yesterday. Does can AMLA show us how we compare with other countries? Pwede mo pakita na yung kanilang mga ginagawa ay effective sa kanilang bansa, nakikinabang sila. Because nakikita ko, ang daming strategic deficiencies mga bansa. Ito yung talagang strategic Albania, Bahamas, Barbados, Botswana, Cambodia, Ghana, Iceland, na napaka-liberal pa ng attitude niyan, Jamaica, Mauritius, Mongolia, Myanmar, Nicaragua, Pakistan, Panama, which has a free port in Colon, and Syria, Uganda, Yemen, Zimbabwe. Are there any other countries that you know of na nakikita natin? Because the other thing that I showed yesterday is in 2014, ang dami ring mga countries na talagang Afghanistan, Antigua, Barbados, Barbuda, tawag nila, Argentina, Australia. Ulitin ko ulit because I want to emphasize the point. Austria, Bahamas, Belize, Bolivia, Brazil, BVI, British Virgin Islands, Burma, Cambodia, Canada, Cayman Islands, China People's Republic, Colombia, Costa Rica, Curacao, Cyprus, Dominican Republic, talagang parang kung ito, France, Germany, Greece, Guatemala, Guernsey, Guinea-Bissau, Haiti, Hong Kong, India, Indonesia, Iran, Iraq, Isle of Man, Israel, Italy, Japan, Jersey, Kenya. And if I go on, I'm going to lead to my question. Ito ba mga bansa na ito ay nagkaroon ba ng iba yung kaginhawahan sa krimen? Iba yung kasaganahan sa kanilang bansa? Ayan Latvia, Lebanon, Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, Macau, Mexico, Netherlands. Wow, yung mga old countries yan. Nigeria, Pakistan, Panama, Paraguay, the Philippines, Russia, Singapore, yan, idol natin yan, Somalia, Spain, my gosh, our mother colonial master natin, we're about to celebrate, sabi kami sa Senator Soto, and we should, Saint Martin, Switzerland, Taiwan, Thailand. I remember yung in-escortan kong Prime Minister ng Thailand o President si yung dating Cebu Police ng Thailand tapos naging presidente siya ng Thailand or Prime Minister during the time of Gloria Macapagal, she came here and he bought a football team. He bought a football team in London. And then, ano pa siya hanggang ngayon? Wala nangyayari sa kanya, di ba? Thailand yan. Can you take a look at it? Ecuador, Egypt, El Salvador, Ghana, Gibraltar. Go ahead. Grenada, Guyana, even the Holy See. You remember so many movies we've seen in the past na pinapatay pa yung Papa because meron nagma-money launder. And the latest one was the one where a cardinal was killed in that movie because it's based on a true story. Honduras, Hungary, Ireland, Jamaica, Jordan, Kazakhstan, North Korea, South Korea, another model state, Kosovo, Kuwait, Laos. Ayan. So, ma'am, I'm just citing this to belabor the point, and I'm really deliberately saying belabor the point, na tila hindi ata ito yung vaccine na kailangan natin. Mukhang hindi effective itong vaccine na gagamitin natin. At lalo pa magbibigay ng iba yung hirap kung susundin na lang natin sila na bulag tayo na hindi natin titignan at pag-aaralan natin. Would you agree on that, ma'am, with all the things that we've shown here? I could be wrong, by the way, on this last listing because baka nagbago na. Archive na yan cases na yan ng State Department.
Mr. President, as I mentioned earlier, I share most of the observations of our distinguished interpellator. I just have, of course, as I mentioned also again and again, there are deficiencies and disadvantages also when it comes to some of these. There'll always be a disadvantage. But going back to your question about what is their assessment or what ranking is the Philippines when it comes to our anti-money laundering efforts, well, according to the FATF, there are 18 countries now that are candidates for gray listing. That are already gray listed. And the Philippines, so 18 countries that are already gray listed out of close to 300 countries in the world. I don't know exactly how many. 18 countries, the Philippines is not there yet, but they're threatening that we will be one of those 18 countries. There's no definite ranking in the FATF, but the Philippines is a candidate for gray listing, which means we did not fare well in the FATF standards.
Yes, ma'am. My question really applies to whether all these countries that follow the FATF guidelines are really, rolling in integrity and funding. Are they, ma'am?
Well, as you mentioned, Mr. President, even the highly industrialized countries like the US, for example, I haven't heard of a glaring record also of being able to foil that many, let's say, drug-related anti-money laundering cases. Although I might be mistaken, maybe the FATF or the AMLC can provide us with that data.
Ma'am, I have one question, if I may. Sino ba ang nagne-negotiate sa ating bansa
Yung
para sa
AMLC
FATF?
po, yung AMLC and that council is composed of and also and the secretariat for our AMLC.
System World War II. Yes,
hold
ma'am.
on.
World War II, di ba?
The Insurance Commission is also a member of that. So, but basically, it's the Banco Central. In fact, even the amendments they're the ones that are trying to push for it. So, if I may, Mr. President, let me just read to you the exact composition. So, the the composition is um, I had it marked here. The BSP governor, the SEC commissioner, and the Philippine Insurance Commission chairman.
Uh, do they actually take this position? Ba't yung kami kinakaya? You know, ma'am, I just want to...
Mr. President, if I may not, just to answer this briefly, not only are they taking the position of the FATF, in fact, it has come to our attention that the Banco Central is pushing for an even more stringent regulation, which based on consensus, a lot of our colleagues are against, like allowing the AMLC to have the power um, to issue warrants, for example, and I mean to issue subpoenas.
I'm sure they have good intentions, ma'am, but you cannot help it. I cannot help it, but para bang sumusunod lang tayo since Bretton Woods, the first world countries who won the war, they instituted an international system na control tayo ng World Bank, ng IMF, and growing up in this country, I remember the World Bank is a bad bank. The IMF imposes all these restrictions, and I agree because I can see na nakikita ko talaga mayroon din namang mabuting ginagawa ang mga World Bank and IMF, no? But on the other hand, when you look at how those who other countries have moved on, you can see paikot-ikot like Argentina, palaging in trouble yan sa kanilang economy. And you remember just a few years ago, yung pigs, Portugal, Ireland, Greece, and Spain. And I'm sorry, in the Ireland, Italy, Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Spain. During the European debt crisis, the variant PIGS was also increasing. Ayan, sumama rin ng Ireland, no? So PIGS, hindi BIG, PIGS. So, so the international system, like I said, the world is divided between the haves and the have-nots, and an equal treatment is the result of an equal bargaining strength. Would there be some logic in what I just said? We have an equal treatment from the big countries because our bargaining strength is not commensurate to what we do. Our backbones are weaker, our foundations are weaker. Kaya para tayong taken for granted nga, pinagtatawanan pa nga tayo behind their back na ay kayo nga, naiwanan na kayo ng Korea, naiwanan na kayo ng Vietnam, naiwanan na kayo ng China, naiwanan na kayo ng Taiwan. Tagal na natin narinig yan. So, lahat tayo sunod na sunod. Pero yung talagang dapat natin pasundin, enforce the law, provide equal opportunities today, fight the virus, make sure the health system works, and then make sure that the investments, that's why I so passionately fought for the EPSAs, the export processing zones, and the Clark, ihuli ko na lang yung Subic dahil pinagbibintangan pa ako, Subic lang pinaglaban ko. Because ang totoo niyan, ma'am, gusto ko magkaroon ng hanap buhay ang mga tao. Ganon rin halos dito ang argument. Kung pipilitin na naman natin, susunod tayo dito, ang mangyayari ay panay sunod-sunuran tayo. May nakikita akong magandang kahinatnan, pero kung hindi kayang i-enforce, hindi para lang we are doing lip service. Ang tawag sa atin yan, pakitang tao. Sumasakay lang tayo sa kanilang kariton na wala naman tayo nakukuha na kabutihan at tayo pa ang napipilitan na mahirapan na makakuha ng pera para papasok dito. Marami na akong sinabi, yung Pogo, nagagalit yung iba. Sabi nga ni Secretary Dominguez, hindi pwedeng alisin yung Pogo. Because yung Pogo, 85 billion ang binibigay niyan, if I remember correctly, sa ating ekonomiya. O anong tawag natin dyan? Halos tanong mo lahat ng mga tao, sabihin nila, ayaw nila yung Pogo. ang mga Chinese na andito na, inimbestiga natin yan. Doon sa may airport, meron pa silang shooting range. Pero, basta papasok yung pera, okay lang. Kung Chinese ang papasok na pera, pwede. Pero pag Pilipino, dipindi. Hindi naman po pwedeng ganyan na lamang ang ating bayan. Tumatawa si Ralph Recto. Ralph Recto, ba't ka tumatawag? Di ba? Hindi ba parang gano'n na nangyayari sa atin? May mga tiga Batangas ng araw, masusipag yan. Meron pa sila mga, hindi ko nasasabihin yung mga kwento ng araw. Ang lumalabas dito, para tayong mga Batanggenyo na magagaling rin naman, na sinasabi na hindi bali mawala yung yaman, wag lang mawala yung yabang. So parang papakita tayo ng yabang na sumusunod tayo sa FATF, tapos tayo naman ang naghihirap. Ma'am, I know there is no answer. I know that you're in a very tight position. I really appreciate it. I love you dearly because you're courageously fighting for something that you may not be totally convinced of. And that is a very hard place to be. But I salute you, ma'am. You did a great job. And sorry if I'm not going to be enthusiastically in support of this bill. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. President. And have a blessed Christmas. I cannot say Merry, but let's all be blessed. Have a blessed Christmas. Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. President, I would like to thank the distinguished gentleman from Zambales for his kind words. I find it a little bit funny that you said that you're courageously fighting for something you don't really believe in. But well, I mean, as the gentleman also pointed out, maybe the intention might be good, okay, putting this up. But when it comes to the effectivity of it, no doubt, they're not. We couldn't say that it's been a success. On the other hand, as chairman of the Committee on Bank, I'm tasked to bring this forward. So I thank our colleagues for contributing their opinions on the matter and also their suggestions to better craft the bill. So that's it, Mr. President.
So ano kasi ako, ma'am, na sinasabi sa atin, tinimbang ka, ngunit kulang.
Basta hindi ako yung tinimbang dahil
Hindi ka.
sobra na ako sa timbang.
Tinimbangin pa rin natin pero kulang. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. It's really the enforcement. The devil is the enforcement. Pag ma-enforce yan, okay. Pero kung hindi ma-enforce, baka pinapahirapan natin ang tao natin needlessly. Kaya mo na muna, ginawa lahat ng pasayan ng araw. Kumita na sila, tapos ngayon bawal na tayong kumita. Nagdumi na sila sa ating mundo. Ngayon tayo, hindi na tayo pwedeng mag-coal, hindi na tayo pwedeng mag-environmental responsibility. And of course, I agree with that. Dapat we will always remain environmentally friendly. Pero parang gano'n ang mundo ng Pilipinas eh. Lahat nagawa, tapos tayo hindi na pwede. Maliliit na bansa. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. And again, as like I said, very admirable, very heroic what you're doing. But sorry, ma'am, I really have my doubts about this bill. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you, Mr.
President. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Gordon. I think they're the majority leader. Senator Dillon? For the period of amendments.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we'd like to thank Senator Gordon for his interpellation. And we'd like to close the period of interpellation, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, period of interpellation is closed.
Mr. President, we'd like to open the period of amendments and recognize the sponsor for any amendments, Mr. President.
Period of amendments is open. Senator Grace Poe is recognized. Senator Poe, you might be on mute.
President, we have no amendments at this time, so we will await.
There are no committee amendments.
Yes, we
All
will
right.
await the amendments of our colleagues.
The minority leader?
I'm sorry.
Do you have amendments?
Okay, sorry, sir. Yes, I have a few amendments, Mr. President. The first amendment,
I
if
accept
I'm,
all of them.
Thank you very much.
sorry.
I accept all of the amendments of our good minority leaders.
No, it's better that we go on the record, Mr. President. Thank you, Madam Sponsor. Yes, we have priorly discussed these proposals with your staff in order to facilitate the action on this amendment. The first amendment, Mr. President, with permission of the good sponsor, is on page 1. Page 1, this amendment on page 1 is the amendment initiated by Senator Joel Villanueva, and I have discussed it with Senator Joel, and he gave me permission to propose it so that we can just have one common amendment. The amendment on page 1 is the following. On line 7, instead of the comma after operations, change it with a semicolon and delete the word end. On line 8, before offshore, on open parenthesis, 9 close parenthesis. And on line 10, it will now be, instead of 9, it will now be 10. So it will now read starting with line 8, 9, 9, offshore gaming operations, as well as their services providers, and line 10, the figure 10 open close quote. As we would repeat for the record, this is the amendment of Senator Villanueva, which we have consolidated as our own amendment. We submit, Mr. President.
What does the sponsor say?
I accept, Mr. President.
Accepted. Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Thank you very much, Minority Floor Leader. Thank you, Madam Chair Sponsor. Thank you.
With the
Yes.
permission of the minority leader and the sponsor.
Senator Rito is recognized.
Yeah, maybe an amendment to the amendment. I agree that we separate offshore gaming operators from number 8 casinos to make it number 9. But after the words, as well as their service providers, supervised or regulated by the Philippine Amusement and Gaming Corporation, to include that, Mr. President.
We accept, Mr. President.
No, okay, but I
All
have
right, then we will entertain a motion to reconsider because we already adopted the amendment.
Mr. President, I just have a concern.
Maraming concern na
If regulated, supervised and regulated by the
The
Philippine
Philippine-
Gaming Corporation.
Yes, that's correct.
My concern is service providers are registered under the PAGCOR, but they're not regulated by the PAGCOR. Am I correct?
I wouldn't know, but from what I know is that for consistency purposes, when we talk about covered persons, halimbawa, banks and other financial intermediaries supervised and regulated by the Bangko Sentral. Item number 1. And then item number 2, all those supervised by the Insurance Commission. So in this case, when we talk about offshore gaming operators and service providers, my understanding is that they're supervised or regulated by the Philippine Amusement and Gaming Corporation.
Mr. President, instead of regulated alone, can we also add accredited, regulated, or
That's fine with me. That's fine with me, Mr. President.
Okay.
Mr. President,
Yeah.
Mr. President, Mr.
Senator Drilon.
Yes, can I raise a question to the proponent?
Yes.
The service providers have taken the position that they are akin to business process outsourcing. And from that, I would not put it beyond them to say we're not under the supervision of the PAGCOR. We should not be licensed by PAGCOR because we are business process outsourcing. How do we deal with that? Would they be excluded from the coverage of the law?
And that's why I accepted, Mr. President, the term accredited, because my understanding is that they are accredited.
Yeah, but they might get accreditation somewhere else, not by PAGCOR, accredited by some other agency, not PAGCOR.
Well, basically, the purpose of my amendment is that offshore gaming operators and service providers that are either supervised, regulated, accredited, because you cannot do offshore gaming in the Philippines if you're not regulated,
Okay.
accredited, or supervised by PAGCOR. That is my understanding, Mr. President.
Mr. President, if I may weigh in on this,
Yes.
I understand I understand the concern of the good gentleman from Batangas, but I guess for this law, it can also be a reminder to those that are posing as, I mean, as a offshore gaming operator, even if they're not registered in the PAGCOR, obviously that's one violation already. They are still covered by this law.
If they are not registered, I don't expect them. That means they're underground. I don't expect them to report to AMLA. If they cannot even report to PAGCOR, they will not report to AMLA.
Correct, but AMLA can still investigate them through their coordinated
Yes,
agencies.
yes. But remember, we're here talking about covered persons,
Okay.
right?
Um,
Yes. Who are the covered persons? Who are the people that we want to report to AMLA? That's what this is all about.
how about if we
That they have a
include,
duty to report to AMLA if there is a 5 million peso transaction, isn't it?
yes, Mr. President, what if we
Yes.
include, aside from accredited by PAGCOR, accredited by CESA,
I
PECO,
don't, I don't think CESA is allowed to accredit
or
offshore gaming operators, are they? My understanding is that
Yes.
that's not allowed, yes, today.
Yes, the franchise is broad enough to include that. Anyway, would Senator Recto agree to include a license, etc., by PAGCOR or any government agency? To make
Accepted, Mr. President, accepted.
Yeah, that's better.
Okay.
All right, then,
thank you.
well, the technical procedure is that we would like to entertain a motion to reconsider the
Yes.
amendment.
Yes.
Yes, Mr. President, the proper motion is to reconsider the acceptance of the amendment. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, the amendment is reconsidered. So
Yes,
we are still on line 7,
That's correct.
page 1, or line 8, the number 9. And the proposal of Senator Recto is, will you please state for the record now your proposal?
Yes. After the word providers, add the word supervised, accredited, or regulated by the Philippine Amusement and Gaming Corporation or any government agency.
Okay. I accept, Mr. President.
Accepted. Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Okay.
May continue, Senator Drilon, the minority leader.
Thank you very much. So we on page 2, line.
With the permission of the minority leader, my amendment is on page 1, line 10.
So anterior amendment, go
Anterior
ahead,
amendment.
Senator Recto.
And this is just being consistent with my interpolations yesterday. Okay. Here we have real estate developers and brokers. Then later on in the bill, there is also the LRA, Land Registration Authority. Okay. Now, my concern is, if you recall, Mr. President, that yesterday we discussed how many millions and millions and millions of reports are given to AMLA. And many of them are duplications. Now, when we talk about real estate property here, you have the developer na nagbebenta ng property, a broker, and then eventually, the government agency, yung LRA, Land Registration Authority, who will report also to AMLA. So for the same transaction, there will be 3 documents reported. Sobrang dami ng rine-report sa AMLA for the same transaction. So having said that, just to be consistent with what we were discussing yesterday, is it really necessary, before I propose my amendment to the sponsor, to have real estate developers, brokers, and also the LRA for the same transactions? Why not just use one? Maybe, for example, the LRA. Now, if you want a copy of that report, maybe the developer or the broker. But why three?
Mr. President,
Yeah.
it is with the mutual evaluation report recommended that the Philippines, and I quote, the Philippines should include real estate agents as covered persons under the AMLA mutual
Yes.
evaluation report. So ang
Yes,
binanggit, opo.
Yes.
In
So
that case,
really,
why don't you, wait, Senator Recto, in that
Yes.
case, if that is the proposal of FATF, why don't we just say real estate agents? That is what they want. Why are we being popish than the Pope?
I agree with the Senate President. That's precisely my point.
Yun lang hinihingi eh. Bakit natin gagawin? Pati
Yun ang
real
problema,
estate
lagi
developers,
tinatagdagan.
brokers.
Mr. President,
Sabi nila, real estate agents.
Oh.
O, yun
and
lang.
then, meron po kasing kasunod, Mr. President, if I may clarify.
Mm.
Of course, I'll yield to the wisdom of the body, but the FATF also states, in the case of the Philippines, it is the real estate brokers and not the real estate agents who are authorized to conduct the transaction of buying and selling of real estate. As to real estate developers, the FATF guidance on RBA for real estate agents defines real estate agents as real estate professionals or companies who, by representing the seller and or buyer, act in the purchase and sale of the real property and real estate transaction capacity. So the business model in many countries is that real estate developers as well as real estate agents, thus there is a certain level of money laundering vulnerability in the real estate developer business in itself. So, bale, ang dami nilang sinabi dito, kinapon na nila lahat, pati yung lababo, para ma-cover. So, binanggit nilang real estate brokers sa isang provision, binanggit nilang developers sa isa naman, at ang umpisa, real estate agents. So, lahat po yan, binanggit nila.
I see, I see. In other words, it's real estate. They're after transactions of real estate transactions.
Yes, but let me also point out that there is also a provision under the committee report that LRA will also report any amount, if I'm not mistaken. Under 5 million din, no? Whether cash or not cash.
Yes.
Kasi kailangan patituluhan mo rin naman yan eh. Di ba? Oh. So, you know, just to be consistent with what we were discussing yesterday, there are a little less than 40 million reports a year. Hindi na babasa lahat yan. And then dinadagdagan natin ang dinadagdag. And now we're including real estate. Ha? So, how many reports kaya ang i-report ng LRA sa isang taon? And then yung broker pa ngayon. And then the developer pa ngayon magdadagdag. Puro report. That is the point. So, why not choose LRA lang? Or let's say, sige, you want another copy? Maybe the developer. But why make it hassle also for the small broker? Na ano yung nalalaman niya to report to AMLA? Paano siya magre-report? Computer ba yan? Papel ba yan? Padadala? How will that work?
You know, Mr. President,
Yes.
I agree with the observation of our pro tempore, except that in the FATF report, they specifically mentioned developers. In fact, I'm not even sure that they mentioned the land regulatory agency. So they will be required to do the following, which is to perform customer due diligence in all their clients, report, and all of these things would be required of the brokers.
Correct. So how many brokers are there? 45,000?
I think yesterday that it was mentioned as that number.
Yeah.
Yes,
So tuturuan yan ng AMLA, 45,000.
bahala sila.
But that's the point. That is the point, Mr. President. How will they report? Hindi ho ba pag hindi nag-report may kulong sila? The 45,000. there is a penalty.
Pero,
Pwede sila makulong pag hindi sila nag-report.
correct, but let's go back also na it's for a 5 million cash transaction, Mr. President. So, yun naman yung kanilang medyo hindi naman siguro araw-araw na may mga ganung transaksyon na one time.
No, we understand that. The point is, you will have to train 45,000 brokers. Isn't it? And how will they report?
Supposedly, they can do this online, but again, as you mentioned, hindi naman lahat merong connection online, mga ganyan.
Oo.
Pero
So that's why I'm
what the
saying,
FATF
yes.
is saying. I mean,
I'm tossing this to the body. Now, why not just, number one, either the government agency, the LRA, or if at all, yung developer na lang. But why the 45,000 brokers at all, ah?
The only reason why I understand, but I'm putting it forward because that's precisely in the recommended.
Yes. The problem with the FATF, they don't understand how it works in the Philippines.
Well, apparently they say that that's the reason why they put it there is that our business structure is what they evaluate.
Yes, it's different. It's different in America. It's different in Europe, how they do it there, and it's different in the Philippines. Di ba? Oh,
I
yes.
think the minority.
Yes,
Yes.
I
Mr.
agree
President.
with the President Pro Tem. And the danger with, before I recognize the minority leader, the danger with the 45,000 the real estate agents who are going to be trained and will report, kung ano man yung mga i-report naman, let's be honest about this. Ang tatargetin lang naman nila, yung gusto nilang targetin eh. Hindi naman titignan yung 45,000. We know that. Di ba? Anyway, the minority leader is recognized.
Yes, Mr. President, we support the amendment of the recto because we are after money launderers here. Yung maliliit po ng mga broker sa probinsya, hindi naman siguro yan ang magiging paraan ng money launderers na dumaan doon at magtago ng pag-laundry ng pera nila. The brokers, Mr. President, in substantial transactions usually can work through real estate developers. So the proposal of Senator Recto is to delete brokers, retain the real estate developers, and let the real estate developers be responsible for reporting. That was also the point we were raising during the committee hearings of this bill, that when the brokers transact business usually in behalf of the real estate developers, they are acting for and on behalf of the real estate broker of developers, not them. Well, it can be argued that there are exceptions to this when the real estate broker would act in their behalf. But ilan lang po yan, and as against the reality that we face, that there are over 40,000 brokers which you will now require to report. So it is, more realistic just to have the real estate developers covered, and they have the capacity to comply.
No. Yes. And in addition to that, you still have the LRA, regardless of the threshold amount na cash, na magre-report din naman eh. It's a government agency na magre-report din to AMLA.
Pag-ibukas mo nga ito, at ako na, maiinis na ako.
Mr. President, if I
Go
may,
ahead,
I would like to.
Go ahead, the sponsor,
chime in.
Senator Po.
Mr. President, may I be recognized after? Okay.
All right, Senator Po, your reaction first, then we'll recognize Senator Villar.
Mr. President, I understand and I sympathize with the concern of both the majority leader and our pro temp. There are too many brokers, but I would just like to register for the record that the brokers don't oppose anymore being included as covered persons as long as the threshold was increased to 5 million. Look, personally, personally, I think that there are too many requirements. And in fact, if we can get away with not including the brokers, why not? But then the FATF recommendation has spelled out brokers. So that's fine. I'm just saying that it will be another reason for them to say, well, you did not comply. So I'll just bring that forth and put that forward, and it's up to our colleagues and if they still want to revise this.
Ann?
All right, Senator Cynthia Villar is recognized.
Meeting, I thought that when we had that committee hearing, Mr. President, that our sponsor agreed that it will be the LRA who will report on these transactions. And we raised the limit to 5 million pesos. I thought that is the agreement. I didn't know that you're going back to the brokers and the developers. You know, when you are a developer in the Philippines, whenever you sell a house and lot, you have to process all their papers so they can borrow from the bank. And you just cannot imagine the difficulty we face. In fact, that's the major problem of those selling houses, how to document the credit worthiness of the buyers, especially our buyers, because if they are buying 5 billion and below, hindi sila masyadong sanay na nag-uutang sa bangko. So yung developer ang gagawa ng lahat ng papers nila and very voluminous. So hirap na kami doon. And we just do it so we can sell because nobody will buy this property for cash. You have to arrange loans for them. And dadagdagan nyo pa yung trabaho, backlog na nga yung trabaho. And ang laki-laki na nga ng ginagasta para i-document lahat to na in terms of administrative work that you have to pass on to the buyers. Kasi syempre lahat ng gastos ng paggawa ng transaction, ultimately magmamahal yung product because ipapass on yung mga cost sa product. Oh, and how is the case of ease of doing business? We're making business harder for everybody. We're not promoting the ease of doing business in the Philippines. Abe, require ng katakot-takot. Bakit tayo makikinig sa kanila? In fact, I called the Department of Finance. Why is it that yun ang stand ng AMLA? Sabi niya pagpasensyahan daw kasi mga bureaucratic employees daw yun doon sa hindi naman masyado nakakaintindi ng business. I thought they understood already that this is not the way to make easy the effort to do business in the Philippines. Parang tayo, lalo natin pinahihirapan ang businesses. And then pag humihirap ang businesses, lahat ng gastos niyan mapapasok sa buyer kasi kung malaki ang magastos ang paggagawa ng business, then magmamahal ang produkto. Siyempre pag mura ang pag-implement ng business transaction, mura rin ang produkto. So you are making it hard for people to buy because yung overhead lumalaki kasi create ng department, create ng bureaucracy, create ng lahat gusto nating i-create. Oh. Ang mahal-mahal niyan and they all go to overhead. They don't go to any services to the people, I assure you. Because I've analyzed the bureaucracy for the last, I've been a senator for the last 7 years. My God, I'm so surprised. The cost of bureaucracy in the Philippines. You know, I used to operate a private business. Hindi ganyan ang cost of operating a private business. Pagka mahal-mahal ng gobyerno. And lahat na ipasa natin batas, pinalalaki pa natin ang bureaucracy lalo. Lahat yan, magpapaso niyan sa mga buyers. Because that would form part of the cost of doing business. So sana, kaya tayo nung nag-explain, hirap na yung mga broker natin, hindi nila kaya yung ganyang klaseng reporting because they are just very simple people. At developer naman, ang dami-dami na naming pinoprocess na ang hirap-hirap na pagod na kami. Nagtitiis na lang para makabenta. Eh, ba't hindi nila pag-reportin yung LRA? Lahat ng transaction namin dumadaan sa LRA. Ba't hindi yung gobyerno pag-reportin nila at sila mahirapan? Ba't nila pahihirapan yung mga simple people? Yun lang. Kala ko nagkaintindihan na tayo that we raise the to 5 million and then LRA will report. Bakit ngayon may broker na naman at saka meron na naman developer? Eh sana wag bumoto ang ating mga senador dito. Kawawa naman tayo lahat. Lalo na kami, we're not selling to people who will launder. We are just selling to simple Filipinos and 50% of them are OFWs. Tapos pahihirapan nyo pang bumili ng bahay dito sa Pilipinas. 50% ng buyer namin are OFWs. Sila ba yung maglo-launder? Wala nga silang pera. Hirap na nga sila pa sa paghahanap buhay.
Mr. President, I respect and again, I appreciate the sentiments of our colleague from Las Piñas. And I know that she has first-hand knowledge of the difficulties of running a business. And I'm glad that she brought up the Anti-Red Tape Act and the ease of doing business in the Philippines. Definitely, there's an impact on the cost of doing business, all these requirements of the FATF. I just like to clarify that during the hearing, I agreed that it is a redundant form of mechanism to require the brokers, etc. But when we spoke to the Brokers Association, when we increased the threshold to 5 million from the original 500,000, they no longer opposed it. So I would like to apologize if my stating my personal opinion during the hearing might have been understood as the committee recommendation to remove the broker. Remember, what we are trying to do here is just really comply with the recommendation of the FATF because of the threat of the green list. But I will always yield to the wisdom of the body. If we don't agree to include the brokers, that's really up to the body. I just want to give you, just remind you that, of course, they might get off on a technicality and say, well, since you didn't put the wording that we recommend, you're still unable to comply. So we have to, I mean, it could be, we could say it's a form of bullying also on their part, but we have to be ready in case we are gray listed, what the impact on other sectors as well will be. For example, as the good senator from Las Piñas mentioned, the OFWs that are buying houses here in the Philippines, of course, the cost of their remittances could be affected also by the FATF gray listing. So, I mean, that's all. If you don't want to include the broker, I will divide the house on this issue, and we can put it to a vote, and I will accept what the recommendation is.
Yes, I would want to manifest that yung brokers and developers parang unnecessary na yon kasi magre-report na ang LRA. Lahat ng transaction namin dadaan sa LRA. Bakit magre-report pa ang brokers and developers when every transaction, when you buy a real estate property, it passes through the LRA.
And Mr. President,
So bakit kailangan pa mag-report yung private sector? Di mag-report yung LRA.
Mr. President, as I said, personally, I agree that it is a redundant mechanism according to the wording of the FATF. Now, if the
Why do
body
you?
will-
Because it's different from country to country. So we should not listen to them. Dapat kasi yung ating in charge dito sa Philippines, ina-apply niya rin yung kung ano yung nangyayari sa Pilipinas. Hindi siya pakinig ng pakinig doon. In fact, whenever I'm defending a bill, pag may mga sinasabi sila that it's not making sense, I tell them that it's not making sense. Why do we follow? Iba ang real estate transaction sa states. Merong parang between na buyer and seller, merong private person na gumagawa nun. I don't know what they call it, but it's very different. It's not the seller and it's not merong in between na parang may certain system sila on real estate there that it's not being done in the Philippines. Kasi siguro hindi naman tayo ganun ka-sophisticated at saka siguro mas mahal yun. So we're not applying that.
Okay, Mr.
So
President.
it's different from one country to another. So we should not never listen to them. We should be practical because it's so hard. You know, it's very hard to do business here in the Philippines because of all the bureaucracy that we want to create. Oh, nagugulat ako na gusto maraming bureaucracy. Ang mahal-mahal ng bureaucracy. Pagka mahal-mahal ng bureaucracy, I see the budget of all our parang ang ating mga department, mga agencies, mga ganon. Ang budget nila lalaki. And then it's all going to admin work. Wala namang napunta for the benefit of the people. Nauubos na sa admin work yung budget natin. Ako gulat na gulat doon, hindi lang ako nakibo Oh, lahat admin work. Would you believe pag sinabi mong 50% na lang ang overhead nyo? Ayaw pa nila. Ayaw pa nila. Oh, they resent it. 50% ng budget o overhead. Ano na pupunta sa mga tao? Oh. Ang gustong-gusto natin mag-create ng overhead. Oh, sana maliit lang yung overhead and then yung benefit pumunta sa mga tao. Kaya ako, pag nagawa ako ng bill sa agriculture, dinidiretso ko na doon sa agency para hindi na dadaan to the whole bureaucracy. Kasi pag dumaan sa whole bureaucracy, hindi na dadating sa mga tao yung program. Nagtataka sila why pinipinpoint ko yung mga agency na pagdadalan. At gusto ko yung DBM diretso sa agency. Kasi pag dumadaan sa whole bureaucracy, nawawala na yung pera, hindi malaman kung saan napunta na yung pera. Wala nang project para sa mga tao. Sana i-lessen natin itong mga ganitong requirement natin kasi mahal to Mahal to for everybody.
Mr. President,
This is expensive.
there's no doubt it's added expense on our part and also added work. I would like to clarify that we did ask the AMLC if it was possible not to include certain covered definitions like brokers, but it is in the wording of the FATF. Now, I know that most of you won't agree with it, but I'm just putting forward their recommendation. In fact, if we don't agree with their wording, we can always object to it. But let's just be prepared that one of the things that they threaten us with is gray listing. So it's really up to the body because I feel that we put this forward already. In fact, our AMLC is proposing an even more stringent measure than what is being recommended by the FATF. So if we remove the term brokers in particular, maybe we can have an explanation somewhere that the LRA is the depository of all of these real estate transactions, and that's how it's done in the country. That's the only way we can probably justify not including it at the strictest definition of terms that they wanted.
Senator Coco Pimentel is seeking the floor. You're recognized.
Yeah, I am not taking any side, Mr. President, but just to understand what the ongoing debate is all about. I could see that if we change the wording, it also changes the policy or the intention of the law. I get the impression from the committee report, page 1, line 10, by using the phrase real estate developers and brokers, I get the impression that we want to cover all real estate transactions in that amount, no 5 million in cash. And if we, because of the word of brokers, the presence of brokers who can also facilitate the second sale of a real estate property. If we remove brokers and only cover real estate developers, we change the entire concept. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, that we only want to cover the first sale of a real estate property from the developer to the first registered owner. But the sale of the first registered owner to the second buyer is no longer the sale of a real estate developer. That is the impression I get. So I want to be clarified, Mr. President.
Senator Grace Poe would like to respond.
Mr. President, what exactly is the question again of our good senator from Cagayan de Oro? Clarify what?
Because I get the impression that the discussion is going towards an amendment to delete the phrase "and brokers" on page 1, line 10. Hence, limiting the covered persons to real estate developers. Will this now change the original intention of the measure, which is to cover all real estate transactions in the amount indicated in the measure? Because pag tanggalin mo si unbrokers, parang I get the impression na yung first sale lang ang magiging covered from the developer to the initial or the first buyer. Ganun po yung mangyayari. So I want to be clarified so that I will be guided just in case we need to vote. I will know where to position myself.
Mr. President, I've also brought this up. Not all sales are sales that are coming from developers. I think that there are also individual sales that don't include developers, like let's say in a single house sale, if I'm not mistaken. That's why we also included the brokers as, we accepted the recommendation to include brokers. Now, in the case of the Philippines, this is from the FATF, recommendation. The purpose of the coverage is to regulate and ensure AML CFT monitoring of the transactions of buying and selling of real estate, because this is where the placement, layering, and integration, meaning money laundering stages, may occur. So the good senator from and succeeding sales.
If I may, Mr. President, maybe I can add on to the discussion. Because there are three here. It is not only the developer, it is not only the broker, but you still have a catch-all phrase here later on page 6 to require the Land Registration Authority and all its registries of deeds to submit to the AMLAC reports on all real estate transactions. So, hindi lang to developer, hindi lang to broker, pero meron bang LRA? The point is, why not LRA na lang? Regardless of first sale or second sale, it is still LRA.
Okay.
Not LRA. Yes.
Mr. President, if I may weigh in on that. I
To
agree.
reduce the
Ayaw
cost,
nila ng LRA.
Okay,
to reduce the cost of all this regulation, and it will make the job of AMLAC easier. Instead of getting millions and millions and millions of reports, many of which patong-patong the same transaction, why not simplify so that it's easier for them to do their job? That's what we're trying to do here, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I am cognizant of the situation, and I personally agree that it is redundant. But during the mutual evaluation, the assessment team to the AMLC, they found this mechanism to be deficient since the LRA does not perform AML CFT obligations. Moreover,
I'm sorry,
the reported
because the LRA does not?
the LRA does not perform AML CFT regulations. Moreover, the reporting
So
of the
kasalanan ng LRA.
Kaya, Mr. President, if I may just finish.
Yes,
If I may
yes,
just
okay.
finish.
Okay.
Moreover, the reporting of the LRA occurs after registration, wherein substantial time has already passed from the transaction. So, Mr. President, if we are really firm on not including brokers and developers and just leaving it to the LRA, we need to be able to have a provision explaining that since the something of that explanation, because otherwise they might be looking for but okay, so the LRA is the agency that's authorized to accept
Yes,
all of these
yes,
records, but we need
yes.
to fine tune again the wording so that we can justify that
Okay.
the LRA is the primary
I understand. Yeah, with the permission of the Senate President, no? Okay. Because the LRA did not ngayon yung real estate developer at broker. That is the report of the FATF. Di ba? Eh di dapat gawin, turuan ng mabuti ng AMLAC yung LRA na gawin nila ng tama yung trabaho nila. Under the law, it says within 15 days, they have to report. Okay? Now, based on what the sponsor read, deficient yung trabaho ng LRA. And ergo, the solution is, let's ask the developer and the broker to do the reporting. But again, as I mentioned earlier, there are 45,000 brokers. Tuturuan ba natin lahat yan? Tuturuan ba may budget ba yung AMLAC para turuan lahat yan? You know, among others, I think those are the issues. So, I'm
Mr.
just tossing this to
President,
the body. Yes.
No. Can I just make a motion to divide
Go
the
ahead.
House with regards to this? I mean, again, I can't just impose my personal will on this, which is more leaning towards what my colleagues are reasoning out. But I think we should divide the House on this issue, or else this will never end on the matter of redundancy and compliance.
So what is the proposed amendment that we are going to vote on? Are we still talking about line 10 of page 1?
Yes, Mr. President, based on our discussion, I think Senator Recto is in a better position to propose the
Yes,
amendment.
yes. I wanted to make the proposal, Mr. President, as we discussed earlier, no? And we were asking questions so that we can propose the proper amendment, no? And at the very least, of course, I would rather that tanggalin yung real estate developer and broker and let the LRA do their job. But assuming that there is a need to have redundancy, then just the developer, wag na yung broker kasi yung tatlo. Nevertheless, I will submit to the body, you know, I don't have the answer also to this question, but I think for efficiency, I would prefer just the LRA. And if it's just the LRA, then we delete real estate developers and brokers.
You delete number 10 and line 10. And 10.
Yes.
Totally delete.
if we-
Wow. Okay.
Either the brokers or, you know, I'm willing to sleep on it, Mr. President. We can think about it first. Because I've not seen that letter also of FATF. Ang nabasa ko dati kasi real estate agent lang. Then I don't know of their review of the LRA. It's the first time I'm hearing that they reviewed the LRA.
Right.
But I think the senator from the Piñas wanted to make a point before we decide on the matter, Mr. President. But I can move on to the next amendment. Then we can go back to this. Yes, please.
You know,
Kasi kung,
okay.
I just want to make a manifestation. Kung hindi
Okay,
nagagawa ng
Senator De La
LRA,
Rosa.
kung hindi nagagawa ng LRA ang kanilang ang kanilang assignment, maybe we should compute yung AMLAC. Dapat i-computerize nila yung relationship nila sa LRA para automatic na nire-report sa kanila. Hindi yung pahihirapan mo yung developer, pahihirapan mo yung broker, but hindi i-solve yung relationship ng AMLAC sa LRA. and spend for that so that maging efficient sila na every transaction sa LRA papasok na sa AMLA para walang sinasabi na hindi nagre-report ang LRA. Kung hindi nagre-report ang LRA, lalo na yung mga developer and broker. Kung yung government agency, hindi nila mapuwersa mag-report, di lalo naman yung private sector. Tatakutin na
way-
naman nila yung private sector. At
Alright,
sasabihin nila, ipakukulong nila. Tama ba yun?
The way I heard the FATF provision that was read by Senator Poe, ang gusto mangyari ay yung sinasabi nila Senator Lacson sa Cavite, sinasalakab. Lahat gustong isama. Ganun eh. So why don't we do a Pia Cayetano on this? You know, we jump to the next and take it up later. That's their strategy, hindi create eh. Let's take it up later. There is no very firm motion or objection to the issue. We can sleep on it. Let park it. Yes, that's the word they use.
I have no objection, Mr. President. Yes.
Let's park the page 1 and proceed to the second page because as the other members of the Senate have mentioned, there are a number of amendments going to be proposed. Madami pa ito. And then there is no way we can pass this on third reading today. Baka second reading medyo hingalin pa. Pero yung third reading imposible because there is no certification. The certification that we received is not the type of certification that is allowed in the Senate. So
I agree.
let's move on to page 2, if you don't mind.
I agree,
Sponsor.
Mr. President, I agree. Thank you for the motion to move on to other amendments. In fact, the certification is, thank you for clarifying that it is not something that that is up to the standards of the Senate.
Yeah, so let's move on to page 2. Any amendments on page 2?
Yes, Mr. President.
Yes, the minority leader is recognized.
Yes, subject to our final disposition of real estate developers and brokers, subject to that, on line A, the number 9 should be changed to number 10. Of course, if finally we delete real estate brokers, real estate developers and brokers, that would be again amended so that there is no reference anymore to section 3A, 9 or 10. So, but just on that condition, Mr. President, we submit the amendment on line 8 instead of 9, make it 10.
All right.
I accept,
Instead
Mr.
of 9,
President.
make it 10. In case.
In case.
Depend on the decision. All right. We noted.
In case, because I'm against all the giants in the chamber, so most likely there won't be a 10. But anyway,
All right.
So
we proceed to
we can
the
have the amendment subject to that condition, Mr. President, just
Yes,
so it is
yes.
record.
All right. That is noted. Let's move to page 2.
Frank, I there. Senator
Yes.
Frank.
Yes, page 2. Any amendments on page 2?
None from our end, except for that manifestation, Mr. President.
Oh, yes. All right. Any amendments, Senator Recto? Page 3. Any amendments on page 3?
Mr. President, on page 3, the amendment is on line 4, page 3, and to just retain section 254 and 255 and to delete 264, 264A, and 264B.
What does the sponsor say?
If you can give me a moment, 1 minute suspension, we need to clarify what are those sections, Mr. President.
All right, session suspended. Minority Leader.
Mr. President, we'll resume. I believe we have a consensus, speaking over the online session during the break. I think we have come up with a consensus with the sponsor that will speed up the process, Mr. President. May I recognize the sponsor once again? And if we can start again on page 1 on the park provisions that were park amendments, Mr. President. So,
All right, Senator Grace Poe is recognized. And for the amendments on page 1, again, Senator Ralph Recto, the President Pro Tem.
Mr. President, I will propose this amendment as discussed earlier, realizing too that we will still have a BICAM so that we can pass this bill as fast as possible, knowing that we will have further debates on this at the appropriate time during a bicameral conference committee. So let me start so that we can move the process forward. On page 1, line 10, delete number 9, which is now number 10, real estate developers and brokers.
All right, what does the sponsor say?
Approved, Mr. President. Accept.
Adopted, accepted. Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Next,
Page
Mr.
two.
President, on page 2, line 7, for covered persons under section 3A10, a single cash transaction involving an amount in excess of 5 million pesos or its equivalent in any other currency to be deleted, Mr. President.
I
Yes.
accept, Mr.
What does the
President.
sponsor say?
I accept.
Accepted. Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President. On page 3, on line 4, delete 255, 264, 264A, and 264B. And the reason for
Earlier, you
this,
did not,
yes,
earlier you did not delete 255, huh?
yes, I'm deleting it now and just leaving 254.
okay.
And the reason for this, Mr. President, just for the record, my understanding is that the FATF is interested only in tax evasion. So 254 is tax evasion. The other sections are not tax evasion, Mr. President, and that's why I'm just moving for its deletion.
All right. What does the sponsor say?
I thank the gentleman from Batangas for calling our attention to this. Yes, I accept.
All right. Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have no amendment on page 4.
No amendment either, Mr. President.
Page 4, we go to page 5.
On page 5,
Page,
Mr.
Mr.
President.
President,
Yes.
Senator Tolentino is recognized.
Mr. President, as I intimated a while ago, I have an amendment for page 3.
Page 3.
Line 7 and 8, instead of 50,000, make it 50 million, make it 20 million pesos, Mr. President. And I have a rationale for this, Mr. President. While the gentleman from Batangas deleted several provisions coming from the National Internal Revenue Code, I would tie this up with our international commitments relative to several UN Security Council resolutions, weapons of mass destruction, international terrorist financing, and to make it straight, Mr. President, there is a concept called cheap terrorism financing, Mr. President, and for the record, the World Trade Center bombing in 1993 just cost $3,500, which is 168,000 pesos in peso today, Mr. President. So I propose that amendment 50 million to 20 million, not in compliance with the certification issued by Malacanang, but my proposed amendment since last night, Mr. President.
$500,000. Mr. President, Mr. President,
Senator Dillon is recognized.
yes, would the gentleman from Cavite accept a compromise instead of 20 million, 25 million?
Mr. President,
Mr.
this one
President,
up.
Mr. President,
And
Senator
Addition-
Recto is recognized.
yes, Mr. President, this section on 50 million has nothing to do with terrorist financing. This section is with regard to tax evasion.
yes,
Yes.
Mr. President. I understand that, but the entire preceding lines would tie it up with the previous line would tie it up with as stated here,
No,
terrorism
Mr.
finance.
President. No.
And Mr. President, to clarify this, I have some records here which would show that the Philippines, if we pursue the 50 million and as suggested as a compromise by the minority leader, which is convinced peso. Spain has 7 million in terms of pesos, 7,006,000. So 25 million, Mr. President, as an acceptable threshold for tax crimes would be near all of these countries I mentioned a while ago, Mr. President.
Okay, Mr. President, I just wanted to make that manifestation that this is number 35.
Yeah.
It is not part of terrorist financing. Terrorist financing violation of.
You're correct, Mr. President. We're talking about tax crimes as
Yes.
predicate crime to money laundering, and I mentioned the comparative thresholds. We are the biggest if we will insist with the 50 million pesos. Thailand is nearest to our shores, 15,966,000, Mr. President.
Yes, the only reason why I mentioned, because it's the first time we're doing it, Mr. President. And that's why my understanding is this amendment did not come from me. But my understanding is that the reason why it's at 50 million is really $1 million. That is the reason for this. Now, if the
I agree,
proponent
Mr.
of this, yes, if the proponent of this amendment, my understanding is the minority leader at 50 million. And if the minority leader is willing to accept 25 million, I have no objection, Mr. President. I just wanted to point out to the minority leader that this has nothing to do with the tax evasion. This is only with regard to tax evasion. Yes.
Yes, yes.
All right, so
If I may add, Mr. President, the tax crimes would include not just participation in organized criminal group and racketeering, but terrorism, including terrorist financing, Mr. President.
anyway, what does the sponsor say to 25 million as proposed amendment?
25 million, Mr. President, as
Yes, what does the sponsor say? Senator Po?
I agree, Mr. President.
Accepted. Any objection?
thank you, Madam
Hearing
Chair.
none, adopted.
So the threshold amount is 25 million, huh?
25. Page 4. No amendments on page 4. Page 5. Senator Recto.
Yes, on page 5, since we agreed earlier that we would delete real estate developers and brokers at this juncture, then we will have to delete paragraph N on line 3 and paragraph O on line 7, Mr. President. And re-letter accordingly.
You're deleting the entire number 3 to number 15. Line 3 to line 15.
That is correct. That is correct. At this juncture, because I'm sure we will debate this.
Letter at this juncture, yes.
Yes.
Okay, what does the sponsor say?
I accept, Mr. President.
Accepted. Any objection? Hearing none, adopted. Page 6. Any amendments to page 6? Page 7. Any amendments to page 7?
Amendment, page 7.
Senator, the minority leader, Senator Drilon, page 7.
On page 7, line 12, replace the phrase subject of, replace it with the phrase pursuant to. So it, again, on line 12, delete the phrase subject of and replace it with pursuant to.
I accept, Mr. President.
Accepted. Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
And on line 13, on the same page, Mr. President, replace the word "and" at the end of the line with "or."
Or, what does
Mr.
the sponsor say?
President. I accept.
Accepted. Any objection? Hearing none, adopted. Page 8. Any objection, any amendments on page 8?
Mr. President, yeah. Mr. President, just on page 7, just a clarification.
Page 7, Senator Recto, anterior amendment.
Yes, just a clarification on line 19. On line 19, isn't it that under the current law, the AMLAC already has the authority to enlist the assistance of and or direct any branch, department, bureau of office, agency, or instrumentality of the government? That is already it is already in the law. Isn't it correct?
Mr. President.
What does the sponsor say?
Yes, it is already in the law.
Okay. And so are we amending the law to include the word deputize? Because right now they can enlist.
Yeah, could you repeat your question, Mr. President?
Yes. The first question I had earlier is that under the current law, they already have the authority to enlist the assistance of and or direct any branch, department, so on and so forth. So are we just saying here that we're adding one word? We're amending the law to include, aside from enlisting, to deputize.
Yes, Mr. President.
Okay. What is the difference between enlisting and deputization, Mr. President?
I think deputization is a more formal binding authority. I would assume. I mean, perhaps the minority leader can clarify better if there is an advantage to using deputize.
Without benefit of any deeper study, when you say deputize, it may mean that the deputized agency would exercise the powers of the deputizer, meaning the powers of AMLA. You deputize the PNP, then the PNP can exercise the powers of AMLA. You enlist the PNP's assistance, AMLA still exercises that authority. I would have to state that that is a general knowledge my general knowledge and not based on any deeper study.
Okay, question, Mr. President. The AMLAC can go to the bank premises and to ask for documents from the banks. When you say you're deputizing let's say the PNP or for any other government agency, they can now use the PNP to go to the banks and ask for documents.
Well, the statement of the minority leader without further study, it would appear so because you're delegating the powers of the AMLAC to whoever agency or individual. Like for example, when you deputize a sheriff, maybe our colleague General Bato can clarify also the PNP when you deputize somebody.
Okay.
I offer,
I have no.
the chair would like to offer the definition of both words. You know. When you say deputize, that means you may appoint as a substitute.
Yes.
All right, you appoint as a substitute when you say deputize.
Yes.
When you say enlist, to enlist is to secure the support.
Yes. Okay. Mr. President.
To secure, to ask
Very
for the aid.
Very good, Mr.
What's the
President.
difference?
Today, they already have the authority to enlist the support, especially in terms of investigation and to prove predicate offenses or unlawful activity like kidnapping, drugs, and whatever. But I think it will be difficult to deputize any government agency. So I don't mind further debating this later on in the BICAM, but at the moment, maybe the Senate should be a little more conservative in its approach and just to delete the word deputize and leave it enlist.
Yes.
Yes, I accept, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr.
Any
President.
objection? Hearing none, adopted. Page 8.
Page 8, Mr. President.
Senator Drilon. Senator Drilon, the minority leader, page 8.
Yes, on page 8, we delete lines 5 and 6 and renumber number 7.
Nasaan na ba tayo, you guys?
I repeat, Mr. President, on page 8, delete lines 5 and 6, which empowers them to apply for a search warrant from proper courts, because this is a very vague and general grant of a power to the AMLC. Firstly, the power to look into bank accounts is very limited, and the broad grant here could be interpreted as lifting that limitation. And number two, searching examination of bank deposits is in the nature of a search warrant, and under existing provision, it is only the Court of Appeals which can do that. The way this is phrased here, from proper courts could include the RTC, which is a court of general jurisdiction. That is why, and the danger here is that this is a later law, and it can be argued that it amends the previous provisions. So on that basis, we move to delete lines 5 and 6 on page 8.
Accept, Mr.
What
President.
does the sponsor say?
I accept.
Accepted. Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Mr. President, I have no objection on this, but just one clarification to both the sponsor and to the minority leader, and I support the position of the minority leader here. But today, do they have the power to do search warrants?
Yes, I think so.
If it's a search warrant to look into the bank accounts, it is limited. It can only be granted by the Court of Appeals, and based on predicate, they must show predicate
There
crimes.
must be a predicate crime.
I agree totally.
Yes.
But the next question is, can they do a search warrant and not with regard to a bank account?
The answer that I would say it can be done, because that's an application for search warrant, not but not an examination of bank records. I'm answering, on the basis of general knowledge.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Just wanted to put that on record, just a clarification, Mr. President.
Okay. Any other amendment on page 8? Yes, a minority leader.
Yes, we propose to delete lines 7 to 11, because really it doesn't. I don't see how this can be implemented, this was prompted by my questions raised during the committee hearing as to how the AMLC can determine the beneficial ownership of those who place bets in the Philippine overseas gaming operations. So, because I really thought, and I continue to believe, that there is really very difficult to trace this. But even without this provision, it can be done if they have the will to do it.
Oh, is there a proposal? I'm sorry, I don't think I heard that.
Yes, the proposal is to delete lines 7 to 11.
Yes.
What does the sponsor say?
I accept, Mr. President.
Accepted. Any objection? Hearing none, adopted. Still on page 8? No more? Page 9. Amendments on page 9. No amendments on page 9. Page 10. No amendments on page 10. Page 11.
Mr. President, that's it. Minority leader first.
Minority
Page
leader,
11.
page 11.
Yes, we delete section 9. Section 9.
I'm sorry, what page are we now? 10?
11.
11.
Page 11.
Okay.
Okay, can I can I defer first to this President pro tempore on well, I'm trying to examine closely the proposed amendment.
Yes,
On page-
thank you.
President Pro Tem, go ahead.
Yes.
Ano pa siya mo?
Teka. 1 minute suspension, Mr. President.
Session suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the permission of the sponsor, I have last two amendments on the last page. We are creating two new sections. On page 11, so section 10. Section 10, information, security, and confidentiality. The AMLC and its secretariat shall securely protect information received or processed and shall not reveal in any manner any information known to them by reason of their office. This prohibition shall apply even after their separation from the AMLC. The AMLC shall formulate rules governing information exchange and dissemination, the security and confidentiality of such information, including proceedings for handling, storage, and protection of, as well as access to such information. This is actually found in their implementing rules and regulations. And I thought it would be best to include them in the law itself, Mr. President.
Yeah, that is
What does
a
the
good,
sponsor say?
yes, except Mr. President, that's a good addition.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. President.
All
And
right.
finally, yes.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
And finally, Mr. President,
Ano ito? So,
Section 10, the new Section 10 yun. But Senator Dillon is going to remove Section 9. Therefore, there is a possibility that we will renumber. But let's wait.
yes, Mr. President, if it is in order, can I be recognized on an amendment to
Senator
online?
Dillon, Minority Leader, yes, go ahead.
Yes, we propose to delete lines 5 up to line 9. The effect is that section 20 will be retained as part of Republic Act 9160. So I repeat, the proposed amendment is to delete lines 5 to line 9. The effect of this amendment will reinstate Section 20 of Republic Act 9106, which the committee report seeks to delete.
Yes, we understand. So what does... Accepted. Any objection? Hearing none, adopted. And therefore, we renumber
yes.
the proposal of Senator Recto that is now the new Section 10 will become Section 9.
Yes. And finally, Mr. President, with the permission of the sponsor, one last amendment. There will again be a new section. Section 14, Penal Provisions, Paragraph D of Republic Act number 9160 as amended is hereby further amended to read as follows. Paragraph D, breach of information, security, and confidentiality. The punishment of imprisonment ranging from 3 to 8 years and a fine of not less than 500,000 pesos, but not more than 1 million pesos shall be imposed on a person convicted for violation under Section 9C and violation of Section 10 or Section 9, no? Because we had it earlier, Section 9. On information security and confidentiality. If the offender is a public official or employee, he shall, in addition to the penalties prescribed herein, suffer the penalty of perpetual or temporary absolute disqualification from a public office as the case may be. In the case of a breach of confidentiality that is published or reported by media, the responsible reporter, writer, president, publisher, manager, and editor-in-chief shall be liable under this act. So all of this is already in the law. We're just adding violation of Section 9, Mr. President.
I accept, Mr.
What does the
President.
sponsor say?
I accept.
Accepted. Any objection? Hearing none, adopted. Senator Pimentel is recognized.
Amendment ka? Sige. Thank you, Mr. President. Just a preliminary question to the sponsor before I propose an amendment. Does this law already have, Madam Sponsor, an oversight committee to oversee the implementation of the various anti-money laundering acts?
Well, Mr. President, I would assume it's the Anti-Money Laundering Council that will.
Okay, not
oversee
a
this.
congressional oversight committee. So, because my amendment, Mr. President, would be for the creation of a joint congressional oversight committee, given the fact that this law or this subject matter is becoming more contentious, and this will be a continuing subject matter for legislation, because I think we have agreed that this is an evolving topic. So my proposed amendment would be for the creation of such a joint congressional oversight committee. Maybe we can insert it, Mr. President.
Mr. President, actually, I'm mistaken. There's already in Section 19, Congressional Oversight Committee from the original law, the one that was passed. And if I may read it for the record, there's hereby created a Congressional Oversight Committee composed of 7 members from the Senate and 7 members from the House of Representatives.
9120. That's in the original law.
Meron na.
Section, ano po?
Section 19 of the original from the 17th Congress.
Section
carried on.
19 of the original.
Can we ask for a minute suspension so we can follow the discussion, Mr. President? We'll look for the section.
Session suspended.
From the inputs from the sponsor, the subject matter of my intended amendment is already covered by existing law. So I will no longer pursue the idea, Mr. President.
All right. Any other amendment? Senator Ping Lacson is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the permission of the distinguished sponsor, on page 11, after line 4, insert a new provision, system of incentives and rewards. And the proposed amendment is as follows. A system of special incentives and rewards in the amount of 10% of the value of any money/property forfeited in accordance with this act, to be divided equally between the informant and the agency that led and initiated investigation, prosecution, and conviction of persons involved in the offense penalized in Section 4 of this act, and the forfeiture of the money/property involved therein in favor of the government. The rationale behind this proposed amendment, Mr. President, is that the system of incentive and rewards, this was originally embodied in RA 9160. Now, for some reason, the same was deleted when the law was amended by RA 9194 in 2003. The proposed amendment merely reinstates the said provision as an added impetus to law enforcers and informants alike in the implementation of this law. Also, this is being practiced in other jurisdictions, Mr. President. So I propose this amendment.
What does the sponsor say?
I accept, Mr. President.
Accepted.
Thank you.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Thank you. That's all, Mr. President.
Yes, therefore, we should renumber again. We should renumber after that, after line 4. Right, none. Majority Leader.
So that's it, Mr. President. No other amendments by our colleagues. Therefore, I'm happy to announce the motion to close the period of amendments.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Period of amendments closed.
Thank you, Mr. President. That came out very painless today. We thank the sponsor for that. Very gracious, being the spirit of Christmas.
That's her name.
Senator Grace po.
Hmm?
Gracia ng bayan. Mr. President.
Mr. President, I just want to, I guess, clarify what our senator from Zambales said. Courageous for fighting for something that she doesn't believe in. Of this law, but I also admit that yes, with the help of our colleagues, we were able to cure a few things that might have been too much of an imposition on us. That's all, Mr. President. Thank you, my
Okay.
colleagues.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Once again, thank you to our dear sponsor. With that, Mr. President, we move to approve on second reading, Senate Bill number 1945 under Committee Report number 149. I so move.
I just I'm just reminded of the liberation of Manila, 1945.
1945. I recall.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Senate Bill 1945 is hereby approved on second reading.
Thank you, Senator Frank and Senator Ralph.
Thank you.
It's the Drilon.
Thank you, Grace. Thank you.
Okay. Moving forward, Mr. President.
Majority Leader, kami na lang na Ralph, okay na yan.
Oh.
Mr. President, I move to suspend consideration of the measure. So,
Consideration of the measure is suspended.
just a few housekeeping, items, Mr. President. With the permission of the body, I move that we proceed with the Senate President's designation of the Senate conferees on the bicameral conference committee on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 1396 and House Bill number 8136. This is the Coco Levy Assets Trust Fund.
Let me look at my roster. For the Coco Levy Assets as a Trust Fund, Senate Bill 1396 and House Bill 8136 hereby designate the Senate conferees Senator Cynthia Villar as chairperson and members Marcos, Subiri, Pangilinan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I also move to proceed with the Senate President's designation of the Senate conference and the bicameral conference committee on the
Thank you.
disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 1931 and House Bill number 7440. This is improving confirmation of imperfect titles, Mr. President.
All right, the following members are hereby designated Senate conferees to Senate Bill 1931. Senator Gordon as chairperson and members Drilon, Pangilinan, Hontiveros.
Bah, members of the minority po lahat ito.
I
Mr.
don't know
President.
why they.
Was a member of majority. But that is the prerogative, Mr. President, if the chairman wants to.
No. You found me.
That is the suggestion of the. No, that is the suggestion of the chairman.
Yes, that's the decision of the chairman.
Mr. Chairman, that's not proper. Let us reflect the proper representation and the proportion in the Senate. This is a formal designation of the BICAM committee. Let's take it lightly.
All right, let us, and therefore, if this is improving confirmation in perfect titles, we, Senator Gordon is chairperson, and Senator Hontiveros as member, and Senator Villanueva and Gatchalian as members.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President. With that, we move on to other matters. We have a few, actually 8 in total or more, Mr. President, of my local bills. We'd like to beg the indulgence of our colleagues. We'll make this quick because this has been already sponsored, Mr. President. I move that we resume consideration of House Bill number 1531. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration is in order.
We recognize the sponsor, Mr. President, for there are no members, may I make an omnibus motion, Mr. President, that there are no members who wish to interpolate all these local bills, the 8 of them for education bills, Mr. President. So we go straight to hasten the proceedings with the permission of the minority leader so that we can proceed towards the period of amendment and then second reading approval. Senator Gordon would like to be recognized, Mr. President.
Senator Richard Gordon is recognized. Senator Gordon is recognized. Go ahead.
I believe he's on mute, Mr. President. We can't hear Senator Gordon.
We cannot hear you, Senator Gordon.
We cannot hear you, sir, Mr. President, Senator Gordon.
Yes, Senator Gordon, you're recognized, but we cannot hear you.
Yeah, but tumagin, baka may clarification. Kung may nag-topic sa na iba, then alam ko.
Period of interpret to mix in.
Yes, Mr. President.
Are you on mute?
I can't, we can't get in touch. Senator Gordon, you're on mute, sir. We cannot hear you, sir. Wala. Senator Gordon, you're recognized, sir, but we cannot hear a word. You're on mute.
Yeah. He may need to turn on and off his computer.
Reboot.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, okay. Go ahead, Senator Gordon.
My profound apologies, Mr. President. I have been trying to get in touch since the discussion on having in the bicameral conference committee report several more members from the minority than the majority. That is not something that I endorse, Mr. President. Something went wrong. My assistant had submitted it, and I think there was even something wrong and she submitted. So the bicameral conference committee, if I may be allowed, shall be composed of me, myself, Senator Pacquiao, Senator Lapid, and Senator Pimentel, Mr. President.
We need a member from the minority. At least one member from the minority.
The minority can be Senator Drilon or Senator Pangilinan, depending on the desire of the minority floor leader. Out of respect.
For the minority, we nominate Senator Kiko Pangilinan.
Thank you, Mr. President. With that's all. So I repeat: Gordon, Pacquiao, Lapid, Pimentel, De La Rosa, Pangilinan, and Hontiveros.
All right,
So
we
consider,
hereby-
Mr. President,
I withdraw the designation earlier and replace the conferees with Senator Gordon as chairperson and Senator, sino suggestion mo? Lapid, Pacquiao,
Pacquiao, Lapid,
and
Pimentel, De La Rosa, Pangilinan.
No, no,
Yes,
no.
sir.
You replace one if you want. Lapid or Pacquiao? All right, Senator Pacquiao, Senator Pimentel, and Senator Pangilinan, all peace.
Yes,
All
sir.
right,
four piece. Three piece pala, three piece.
3 peace.
Okay, Mr. President, moving forward. Thank you.
All right, go ahead. We are now in the,
Yes, Mr. President.
that was just a manifestation, and we withdraw that. We withdrew the, all right, so we continue. We have House Bill 1531 on the floor.
Yes, Mr. President. There are no member wishes to interpolate the measure. We move to close the period of interpolation.
Period of interpolation is closed.
Mr. President, there are no amendments to this measure. Move to close the period of amendments, Mr. President.
Period of amendments open.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to approve on second reading, the act changing the name of Pag-asa National High School, the city of Legazpi. I so move, Mr. President.
To approve on second reading?
Yes,
There are
Mr.
no
President.
amendments. All right.
No amendments.
Any objection? Hearing none, House Bill 1531 is approved on second reading.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move to suspend consideration of the measure.
Consideration of the measure suspended.
Mr. President, I move that we consider House Bill, to resume consideration of House Bill number 1533.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration is in order.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, there are no members who wish to interpolate. I move to close the period of interpolation.
Period of interpolation is closed.
There are no amendments as well. I move to close the period of amendment.
Period of interpolation, period of amendments is closed.
I move to approve on second reading House Bill number 1533.
Any objection? Hearing none, House Bill 1533 is approved on second reading.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of the same.
Consideration of the measure suspended.
Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of House Bill number 5741.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration is in order.
Mr. President, no member wishes to interpolate. I move to close the period of interpolation.
Period of interpolation is closed.
Mr. President, no member wishes to amend as well, both committee and individual. I move to close the period of amendments.
No objection, period of amendments is closed.
I move to approve on second reading House Bill number 5741.
Any objection? Hearing none, House Bill 5741 is approved on second reading.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of the same.
Consideration of the measure is suspended.
Anong number mo yung may amendment? 7? Which number?
5744.
Mr. President, I move to resume consideration of House Bill number 5742.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration is in order.
Mr. President, no member wishes to interpolate the measure. I move to close the period of interpolation.
Period of interpolation is closed.
Mr. President, amendment, meron? No amendments as well, Mr. President. Close the period of amendment.
Hearing no objection, period of amendments is closed.
I move to approve on second reading House Bill number 5742.
Any objection? Hearing none. House Bill 5742 is approved on second reading.
Mr. President, I move to resume consideration of House Bill number 5743.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration of 5743 is in order.
Mr. President, no member wishes to interpolate the measure. Move to close the period of interpolation.
Hearing no objection, period of interpolation is closed.
Mr. President, no amendments as well for this measure. I move to close the period of amendment.
Hearing no objection, period of amendments closed.
I move to approve on second reading House Bill number 5743.
Any objection? Hearing none, House Bill 5743 is approved on second reading.
Mr. President, I move to suspend consideration of the measure.
Consideration of the measure suspended.
Mr. President, I move to resume consideration of House Bill number 5744.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration of the measure is in order.
Mr. President, there are no amendments and no
There are committee
interpolators. I
amend- there are
move to
committee-
close the period of interpolation.
Period of interpolation is closed. Hearing no objection.
I believe this particular one has amendments, Mr. President. May we recognize the sponsor?
Senator Sherwin Gatchalian is recognized in the period of amendments.
Thank you, Mr. President. There are committee amendments, Mr. President. On page 2, line 20, before the word supervisors, insert the word superintendent. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
On the same page, line 21, after the word teachers, insert the phrase non-teaching personnel. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
On page 3, lines 1 to 4, delete the entire section 2 and replace with the new section 2 to read as follows. Section 2. The amount necessary for the operationalization of the City School Division Office in the City of Canlaon shall be charged against those authorized in the current appropriations of the DepEd. Thereafter, the amount necessary for the implementation of this act shall be included in the Annual General Appropriations Act. Also move.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
And lastly, Mr. President, on the same page, line 6, after the word DepEd, insert the phrase in coordination with the city government of Canlaon. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
That's it, Mr. President.
Mr. President, with that, I move to close the period of amendments.
Any objection? Hearing none, period of amendments closed.
Mr. President, I move to approve on second reading House Bill numbers 5744.
Hearing no objection, House Bill 5744 is approved on second reading.
Mr. President, I move to suspend consideration of the same.
Consideration of the measure suspended.
Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of House Bill number 5872.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration is in order.
Mr. President, there being no interpolators, I move to close the period of interpolation.
Hearing no objection, period of interpolation is closed.
Mr. President, I move to close the period of amendments as there being no amendments as well.
Hearing no objection, period of amendments closed.
I move to approve on second reading House Bill number 5872. So
Any objection? Chair hears none. House Bill 5872 is approved on second reading.
Mr. President, I move to suspend consideration of the same.
Consideration of the measure suspended.
Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of House Bill number 5740.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration of the measure is in order.
Mr. President, I move that we close the period of interpolation as there's no member who wishes to interpolate.
Hearing no objection, period of interpolation is closed.
There being also no amendments, we move to close the period of amendment.
Hearing no objection, period of amendments closed.
I move therefore to approve on second reading House Bill number 5740. So moved.
Any objection? Hearing none. 5740 is approved on second reading.
And we move, Mr. President, as well to suspend consideration of the same.
Consideration of the measure suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Floor.
Thank you. I believe on the other Senate bills that are for discussion on the floor, particularly on administrative adoption, there are some questions from our colleagues, so we can take it up with the permission, of course, of
Yep.
Ma'am Visa for next year. Not actually next year, 3 weeks from now. 3 weeks from now. Next year sounds very long time.
Yes,
Um,
Mr. President. Yes, good Majority
3
Leader.
weeks from now. Thank you. Mr. President, may I ask for 1 minute suspension, Mr. President? Just 1 minute.
Session suspended. Session resumed.
With the indulgence of our colleagues, with the permission of our colleagues, if we allow, may we allow Senator Francis Tolentino to sponsor his 4 local bills because they have been online since 3 o'clock in the afternoon in their gyms. And apparently the LGUs have fed them already merienda and now they're being fed dinner. So if it's okay, if you can sponsor the measures, Mr. President. Anyway, it's just the sponsorship of these local bills with the permission of the body. Therefore, I move to transfer from the calendar of ordinary business to the special order, House Bill number 6598. If I may be allowed, Mr. President, with the permission of the minority leader, I will transfer all 4 together.
Omnibus,
Omnibus, Mr.
omnibus transfer.
So when the
Yes.
secretary reads the title, it'll be the title of all 4.
Oh.
And also transfer from the calendar of ordinary business, House Bill number 622, 633, and 5944. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, all 4 transferred.
Thank you, Mr. President. Maybe ask the secretary, I move that we should to consider rather. Let me just ask the sponsor. What are the omnibus speeches here?
The last 2, yung
Individual yung first, dalawang cash. Okay, bilisan mo na lang yung sa first.
Isa-isahin mo na lang.
Opo. Mr. President, I move that we consider rather House Bill number 6598 under Committee Report number 153. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none, House Bill 6598's consideration is in order. The Secretary will read the title of the measure.
House Bill number 6598, an act converting the municipality of Calaca in the province of Batangas into a component city to be known as the City of Calaca.
Mr. President, may we recognize the distinguished chairperson of the Committee on Local Government, no other than the gentleman from Cavite, Senator Francis Tolentino.
Senator Francis Tolentino, Chairman of the Committee on Local Government, is recognized. The
Thank you,
sponsor of the
Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I am instructed by the Committee on Local Government, to whom was referred House Bill 6598, together with Senate Bill 1825, filed by this representation, and Senate Bill 1737, filed by the Honorable Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, who joined me during that committee hearing. And I am reporting the same favorably to the Senate without amendments, Mr. President. I have a quick video presentation, Mr. President. This act will convert the municipality of Calaca, a first-class municipality in the province of Batangas, into a component city to be known as the City of Calaca. Alam ko po nakikinig at nanonood ngayon ang mga tiga-Calaca at binabati rin po kayo ng ating mga co-authors. Kasama po si Senators Binay de la Rosa Marcos and Joel Villanueva from Bulacan. It has been 185 years since the municipality of Calaca was officially established by warm-hearted, courageous, and industrious people known as Calaca, which means katribo when they pass by each other. Their houses were made of Calaca roofing, meaning Laka pertains to bamboo. Bamboo, the favorite plant of Senator Pimentel, splintered into 2, either from their gatherings to each other or from the materials of their houses. The official name Calaca came to be. Do we have the video now? Wala pa. As of 2019, the municipality of Calaca is a first-class municipality, as I stated a while ago, with a population of 64,966. Just a short to Calaca, Mr. President. A city can only be created by an act of Congress and subject to the approval of the majority votes cast in a plebiscite to comply with the requisites of Republic Act under Republic Act 9009, which amended the Local Government Code of 1991, or RA 7160. Under the law, a municipality of cluster of barangays may be converted into a component city if it has generated an annual income as certified by the Department of Finance of at least 100,000 pesos for the last 2 consecutive years based on 2000 constant prices. And 100 million, I stand corrected. And if it has either one of the following requisites: 1, a contiguous land area of 100 square kilometers as certified by the Land Management Bureau, or a population of not less than 150,000 as certified by the National Statistics Office. Lahat pong ito ay na-comply ng Municipality of Calaca. Calaca has generated an average annual income of 164,961,000 based on the latest certification of the BLGF, which is more than the 100 million requirement. As for the land area, it consists of 105.49 square kilometers, which is also higher than the 100 square kilometers. The presence of these 2 requirements, Mr. President, are enough to convert this bustling municipality into a city. For the last 185 years, nagkagaya po ng sinabi ko, ang Calaca po ay nakataya na sa kasaysayan ng lalawigan ng Batangas. Previous studies conducted have highlighted that there seems to be an equality in the distribution of the IRA, placing a deep burden on the LGUs concerned. The cost of devolution is shared by provinces and municipalities. Pag makikita po natin, Mr. President, that cities have bigger revenues than municipalities, enabling them to spend more on essential services and infrastructure than municipalities. This is why, again, I would like to reiterate my support together with the co-authors for Calaca's bid for cityhood. This will be the first city in the western part of Batangas. Bukod po dun sa mga nasa eastern side, kagaya po ng Lipa, Tanawan, Santo Tomas, and Batangas City. To quote